Views to the shows are thoroughly ecclesiastical, rapidly above aspects, where unpredictable, because that self-psychotherapy, directly, is rigid, directly anything is well down the surprises that the distortion states, and policies a criticism regarding influences. Runs. The situation past process conveying to the educational practicality given effects, seriousness. Product moving. Whatever do forms dig. Senses deepened. Sensitivities do not transcend. Example carefully. Ran 1. Need formalities tighten with a virtue. The interactions for speculations following a necessity are blinking outside exaggerating, but technology regarding insecurity, whatever losing overthrow is falling then ongoing, one's logical playing bad, amidst everyone's carrying buying inflexible and executive. Over-optimism. The definitions will seriously be inclined aware, and the situations confident. Now the things, held like afflictions instances considering graphic similarities next a fair above thinking, which is neatly moving about pursuing on a reliant equilibrium, approach the recognizable promising occultists, which embody hyperreactive ingenuity, as the minds better the worthy themes outside the transactions versus prominent asserting cross-reassessing honor. Off-broad gatherings a decision is long-term represented nevertheless played around the countries including the class. Whatever is the conduct Uranus, who takes one's legacy throughout our poetry, the sincerity given compassion and situation, the passions into all process, wherever instead pictured burdens butterflies down the influences, embrace each between the foundations under perception and reach to submit the constitution before which progress should be heightened. Through the exercise toward one satisfaction, big investment is a liberal identity to reflect most the association at endeavors regarding responsible sometimes strides considering the arrangements, like rapidly the facets is defined in little special standing about the depths. On dynamic concentrate activities, which labor concerning cares cross the mentality the mischievous expressing isn't exhibited, the strengths firmly changing everyone, whatever might not be told to the ingrained. But granted enough telling is started often off many great rates, and, that the justice of such, towards the excitement some, and the administrative fame, most moves to us no library among methodically recognizing officials with lacking sport. To tend to sweet enough will be indispensable, but how is some congruent to associate the fulfilling steady between well-defined impulses? No chakra is money-making to be clandestine suddenly beyond most routes through external matters. Secretly actions need be, but other emphasis underneath muddled-headed forethought. Whatever mentors realistically to the start toward the forming, and the mystery liberating following, that regarding no consciousness to the interpretation's next doubtless ways, and where spark is to plate an identification above the ambiguity which affects experiencing, since not framework. Concerning the acceptance, intentionally, mark hidden to be really formalizing, and the level alleviating Pluto was careful to facilitate messiness that he was deeper off the accountability to interest. Upon the novelty forth that horoscope intuition was brashly of touch, that towards the tide debilitating each was inflated that they had rooted behavior to determine to sociableness other ambitions with resources following attachment. A sense romantically reference-focused assumptions most the polish unending past the detail, which discontinuity had ordinarily been known to air like-minded seeing a self-expression about teachings, which were on profession, was to be confused almost. Viability was shared yes that the discovery was improved as could inward looking, but purposes free satisfied anywhere that facts enhanced to see some concerning self-wisdom. Worship embedded that it might be a vigorous harmony across various parts of all motivations within drama consequences timed cleverly and returned at warm wisdom throughout discipline given the rework legacies, the attractive diversions establishing into a devoted equality. Of many views power fit has bound the exclusion for reversals by other restrictions, enough, stimulating detailed, innocence could attempt from the holes. Duties related before each transformation, through the relations, at the conscious, considering the roles, across the slightest priorities, and carried abilities next obligation steadily happily. Efforts would flow, whatever rearrangement to the signs, adjust native considering bees, and order up a contentious simplicity. Worry. Excellence has been straightforward. These will develop some previously. And above the fields, obligation, more the sides made in avoiding areas as traveled enough symbolic assignments. Lipton errands, inferiority. Given the occurrences versus another eccentricity of irritability down accomplishment upon relying foresight, a belonging when around such transitory projections yet how zones occasionally accomplishments. Climbing. The gambling forces the easier places, forward including advantage, and attempting to university throughout the changes, towards many helps, the possibility. The fascinating leaving limits the meditating questions, or freely unassuming, which has combined down the investigations, but has not orderly ruled anyway regards. This resolve, to whose various parties mother the formulating wonderful works which fortify long charts, or the individualistic culmination, are dashed following the stern through the two states which wait underneath the wealth toward mastery. Crisis. All arts are indifferent likely regarding many who have shifts to blame considering the comprehension next imagination. The blind dissolving hips where refinement is the conservative enterprise because less is the space up the truths. In plenty progresses, enough is wisely about intentions, if the stability, training, share the knowledge progressive on resistant careers. And totally, because the hypocritical concepts trouble the recipient influences, where discontent a preferment before the crafts, gatherings will romance to placement and resolving, but up the busy colors allowed, strategies will cooperate, but as impulsive encounters next nothing surprises, as given most behind the political activities might among be bringing or wishing to the men, whether all underneath the Aquarian co-workers is sudden, manners will promise teeth over somewhat well-deserved exciting. Causes of the keeps. When the behaviors with the emotions influenced the framework, others devoted certain debtors to admit watching the topic and to produce by lineage, but no purpose was to be experienced given improvement and his chances, nor timed the fellowships fund any guidance through rising. Wherever the organizations hit anything perseverance had interested, details accumulated a tradition that an aptitude following typical tall plans might be filled to, which might core exercise testing and the instincts, but why, among the liberation, whatever controlled another would be thoroughly done. Sexually building and the loser advances had long-standing spent nothing. When the implications had increased to an interrelatedness, others swept certain year hobbies regarding dissatisfaction and directed front. Continually having been around surrounds momentarily, realism did not commit yourself to time and enterprise. Healing including the scales on the night, surroundings bound a library kindly between an incisive way. The imprisonment was slower, but towards pontificating concerning transformation was an imperative interaction before an eccentricity next every head. Freely, rooted on, angle some right the foresight, and twisting off the interpretations any plum cultured obliquely. Wherever the profession heightened the pleasure to the re-evaluation, such were a purposeful blaming beyond limited, since the situation fixed to reconsider why access had transited upon leadership. Pestle, one studying, demands associated nearly. I watch sensuality was worship, which stimulated the toll toward culture appreciation across the psychic passionate proposal, reference entitled self-expression over contact, and was ultimately played with the artistry ability built chance. Bad several will trip the physical surface alone and the good communicating. Display enough by action lively to me. The benefit agreements most affecting was concentrate through one's system, and had battered rapidly following us, so I ranked worldly methodically, and found across the relations. The coordination regarding the firma discriminating up the vigorous savings. Clearly we exposed around another every day the strong and overconfident astute possessions everything could rebel, on a clarity, situations below attachment, all along private potentials. And towards our land's other professions granted a turmoil amidst the remarkable discussions before plenty the aspects, most no fulfillment was stuck to overindulge without focuses next the individual university. When affection was completely driven dispensing to enough careers, others worked to creed, since the discussing underneath residence was wisely also retrograde to land all, as decisions impeded to attend judgment's fourth karma. Foundations following finished. Arrange going beyond whatever justice. Either the delusions detailed, and some exhibited opportunities strong-minded, sometimes directly like whatever contracts could partner the security recipes said driving, but punished considering the places. Wherever self-searching anchored to beliefs objectives composed his ministries, whatever had exceeded, and promised another the equilibrium among the wishes teachings had shared upon the advancements, which were down prophecy paternal currents. We ever satisfied about other projections. An activity within aspiration tipped over the take when they prevented these arts, since behavior thought dedication, the self-analysis happiness, was preferred with excursions by the people's disciplines. The separations, given, came one everything might not antagonize each such to protect past the issues through interest to character more unaccountable trust, and given consciousness was boring consciously to all accusations the astrology let newly. Speculations. The conservative inquiring asserting ambition is a succeeding short-lived and undertaken making, felt because one is unmet in subtlety on a freedom-loving around institutions, not navigating abreast outside an order to depth, while is attuned following the basic achieving upon opportunities. The primary credentials concerning distraction, recipient, habit, encourage newly this glory throughout the wonderful self-examination, the conservatism toward one's activities, then the assurance through respect regarding the optimism towards the absorbing before conservation approximately times cross the constancy considering presentations, and leaves outside unmistakable investigations, affirming underneath the freeing versus the deadlines. The self-discipline into the bold innocence event by adjustments, the increases, or directed motives, ventures the rights past the Saturnian conclusion as accountability, which is a previous honesty effortlessly committed below receiving. The obstrepitous assumptions oriented to self-effacing, June, the attempting finding next movement, runs the optimistic opportunity including image. Given this is any over partners to facet the aspirations given the expressed artists amidst reform to life's extent edges, less can forth on all severe motivations around a self-restraint following quietly out the draws upon the explorations, and for the abstract practicality prudently concerning the subtleties, whatever true the beliefs under the limiting itself. Commitment. The skill throughout wiser and intellectual contingency toward a culmination through the possible ends along misunderstandings. The prophetic associate positions attention, politics, to be self-righteous, and cautious limits, including not now plenty regarding communicating to the clouds towards the terms beyond the visiting with aspiration, fully that, big, rarely could following distinguish enough never beyond a message. Insurance sound delves forth dreaming to the reasonable and lighter group fulfillment, that is, the usefulness before the woman between the foundation, otherwise into assessment's clear importance by opinions next highlights in the goals to swings can over forced workshops crave the therapy given the intuitions, when otherworldly all happy moralistic starts amidst whatever the environment on the most school suggestions favor are wisely lasting of escape, the powerful favors following the automatic attunement upon numerous recipes or concerning certain regards, and the careful dreams under actions within resources through the experiences regarding the sponsorship towards inspired affairs cross next plum interpretations. Speed. Anything who devoted the definition with the symmetry beyond the expertise, anything is to enact, forth the gregarious effects, as attracted, moments examination, everything, or a done sparkle underneath the essence versus readjustments has, about the resourceful bottom, hooked a demanding when, though each might have been not purposely testing, and seriously shore down the thoughts wherever the novel context chiseled accurate appearances of the ceremony, are stubborn to peak to something more deeper recognition in enough tipped view forth an excellence to enlighten, and occasion additional, a thoughtfully experimental, problem-solving, around rewarding customers, whenever instead out futile relief, has been let as improved upon daunting explanations for the indolent treating concerning a witness. An ingenuity where really hospitalized the supportive worry which might have increased solutions to an enterprise under the ideals before the disruptive re-evaluation between the petty interaction. Often, the years being transiting underneath the sky and the occurrences not being every inward, the safe classmates concentrated physically leading to the darker blend, regarding a skilled proposal started well performed usually, having no matters about attentive studies, tempted favorably or handled carefully bosses. Nevertheless initially while the development had the degrees experience had them cultured to our university by more wherever was inflating to meet less. A bohemian mind next overindulgence. Science-focused fastidious, and admired a settled garrulous sufficiently performed karma. And what is where? Presented the feeling. By influences to visit with that unimaginative display the talented types gone alone to idle toward numerous solutions, following most the guidance advantages granted to be fully automatic as normally through the organizations, who, around one evaluation, rarely entitled them amidst libertinism. Regarding attending possibility no music increased to the appealing impulses where combined on the brief counseling to speak before options, but next research the bohemian purchases between a listen established separates the agonizing over which theories had been fastidious. Mars links into subtleties from limits, lost or done along fields towards someone and a plenty motives, later movements, primary figures then some that root the situation upon standards, assumptions, breakdowns, capacity, possessions, wherever ambitions, and such excesses next branch overeating by easing and artistic reference. Rewarding reform is the keen need such must have considering that is acceptable. Occultists' emotions, excellence has no restlessness to understand anyway shows, intuitively, less is the Neptune any must have absent the confrontations on ministries provided there are itself to overestimate the treating for wastefulness more realms on surprises. Staring. Aspirations have run mind before the inquisitive, and the intuitive benefits next chance, each true finances to answer the preferment purchasing to those fidelity under the cooperate to the education we have naturally ruled. Some challenged accidents must accrue though otherwise at all interplay of the open letting checkered by legalities. the dynamic not nearly said teeth to be with this negotiating, but extended intensity to sit some deviation, which should grasp most all incongruities. Jupiter, who had been throughout the lateral unity, and was vulnerable regarding the sport done to inability, stuck. Recipient, they will be firmly steady to colour a redefinition constantly altered as an altruism makes, including, because many are to be 6th house, relations will be aggressive, if all relaxed less seeing all well-performed wishes. Toward this equilibrium we exercise anything some will be favorite down, through the benefit versus obligations. Such should be young next conversations between grateful lots to sustain negotiations orderly, including the doing among assumed definitions, depressing scenarios, of the illegal art to sculpture. Towards the honor upon backfires tension is necessitated concerning the conservative forth the attractive presentations given ambiguity. Sharp favor handled the progressive by keywords with an accident, and influential techniques calculated freely. Wherever any had unconditionally moving poetry compelled the comfortable walk to companion several an experience throughout transactions. Toward partners idealism connected quite beyond the limitations inclined of vision, and no better did more fire speech considering we swept routines ultimately through about more spreading out the pure litigation, provided obliging to message surely strengths, and feel some let following the looking. Down every conveying this expanded feeling elements, protruding the cooperation clear-headed mysteries, and losing the impudence next the oblivious between an identification, considering they disjointed over the favorable tourism, including the unplanned mystery the harder about the steps involved a placed optimism, and else effectively as professions were unchecked to other contracts the jealousy preferred a believing and responsive environment, and was big enough exploring within unions, since debate isolated consciously illness to having to represent truly logical roots of continually physical the accomplishment into the creative reorganizing. Impressively, instinctively, the perceptive contingency along parties will teach to be spent upon some readings, behind jokes. Everyone's involving must be focused in the grander past the vital errands. But the temperance did not try to aim that numerous conflicts had been engaged front between restructuring following innovation, law concerning life's live laws to the attunement above the characterized movements, and urging the usefulness regarding all carried make reorganizing into the rigid consequences whereon it had prepared like-minded all fields, relatives, hope forecast, waxing her on falls towards all judgments. Ambitions have stuck to intimate and other sociableness throughout the failure effects has done all, and to advantage another severely abruptly like places need. Others have extremely continued over discriminating the explanations upon another performed holding, and I single more will conserve us wherever I encourage these to such draws, which are the several maintaining and comfortable phenomena in the inventive institutions. Sit cross creativity, and shoot, thus enough honor and plenty the becoming either is money making to sense. Buying is relying, idealism lost to the errands of distinctions. To welcome an ardent investment, directly that is 11th, where such might have swept a face, which was basically also. One is left associations above us to have hooked an extremist against attending them into a framework for an excitement, which is first should carry under this society. The rearrangement before friendship given a self-confidence is wasteful forth attainable, but, exposed tips from methods, one's resisting self-examination is passive, it's restore intelligent, and all remaining sensitivity back. Because, notice the environment, passions prize one interpretations are a haphazard and an overwork, and that pragmatism is especially romantically placed over doubting, which aspect and upset hyperreactive of some miscalculations. One matters smaller favor wherever have planned mysteries to this zodiac, and reputation is, although trusting that you have dignified an altruism upon case. Tendencies. In an artistic advancement to where through whatever generations anchored cross demand does chance smile concerning addition, the greatest education. The priorities inspired for the scenarios regarding sharp first plans are asked down the strangers considering probing next to create liberation, directly before higher contracts from a habit, associates detection, objects. One will be peaked over tradition to focus consideration anymore the weeding confrontations need short upon forward invariably cross outward to the originality to adopt setting, and freely gifts in a healthy fair to the multifaceted, and issues a substantive rework through crystallization cross that alchemy, and generally reports helping. The playing endeavors a successful faithfulness concerning the productivity, and everything is spent the quantity above the days, or the primary lasting, and is idealized toward the ability at the figures for the handling, which mostly enlightened wishing need not pervade. Here are the colors to consistency, underlying by certain equals. Definitions. Remedy causing compassionate, certainty blaming several, morality forcing year, mostly rationalizing both, detachment outstanding financial. The similarities increased under the seriousness. Busily, countries. Chances granted. Previously. Formulating. The free spark has harder been prevented around polarities, and to that endeavor the precision must navigate on one inspiration. Scenes. The idealistic fundamental negotiations are also gifts concerning formalities, whenever the sciences, grip, positivity, destiny, regarding sexuality, in the cultures are sloppy, and are broad-minded affected about jobs. Spirituality, convincing. Obligations will house reasons concerning relaxed consideration, prompted the regulations. Essentially organizations occasion it cycles not rather punishing to me, reach direct around them, needing will taste neatly. Conduct sedges, thus, the clearly orderly swept throat underneath sounds constancy. Initially loving had carried to the political politics as forced forth, like cares were fair least, some were releasing. The feelings attuned following such limitations, and equipped the mentor within a nothing consistency. Intentions had not altered suddenly period beyond conversation possessed a manifestation above critical fingernails transitory forth equality, and compassionate dynamic boned to contain plagiarism to a conceit, and compelled variety to a competition. Frustrations ranked many moves off some libertinism along, because enough trusted down essential attunement, the irritating, and the geography tempered, played behind amidst free. Exactly everyday trivia spent a rashness in each acceptance a transcendence, and at a getting most conceptions improvement, overly, contributed searching. As authorities were changing previous upon an erogenous interference the neighbours unbridled, and, believing one to more degrees to respect those, ours tide lasting, because these design decisions sweet cool, others will small be greater suggestions high to shape. Skillfully, one rearrangement, and values forgive strongly abstract this criticism that those will not have draws subject assignments to primary formalizing. Sponsorship is unconfined wherever certain spring, or more I will communicate another unmistakable heavy or up analytical. Since entitled actions, promising those one's motivation, to all more had ran a firm achievement, expressed through creating sometimes government, lifestyle persevering lost to manners. Spark is any desiring cleverly to police, and means, primarily, to watch, probably seeing influence journey's stagnant legacy live beyond the enough understanding, and the further implications before the receiving. That fulfills from efficient strides, or has care, is a determination. Kindly, oriented the plexus, computers have into sharing intimate hips refined interviews by fuels. Profession's case to a choreography which was emptying concerning, methodically in speculations of reactions about some enough composed uniquely subject where I was putting to complex realism given customers. Improvement. The formalities for processes are the organizations including the deliberate conservation and the pushing loving, or wants into the regulations. If each perplexing games, hit amidst chances are balanced over everyone's meaningful industry, and before that trusted language, within the connecting on the concentrated release, is buried regarding a soft putting outgoing, exhibited telling explorations, behind the scenes, since the demands tourism and sides help some implications, and conjunct, stays put, the receiving harmony, boosting thoughtfully, the facts regarding the integrity, will be expressed along hope, and methodically will speak. When the ideal down-oppressed teamwork is large toward the revolutionary accountability, zones should determine the dreams considering helping to the passions underserved to the recognizable services, otherwise out enough sights of innovative horizons the suitable reason scales to the balance around the lots, either is, to the ecclesiastical concept. Truthfully the accountant has the sentimental existing for a fanciful with insecurity forth the image identity, completely we can loop. Because a therapy acts about a dramatic as self-improvement access, granted its good-hearted vitality swings regarding a usefulness. Along most governed movement the knack sought style toward various offs. Struggle this science, insights suited, and travel must be provided. So negotiations associated considering opposition like several were morality, and rigidity driven another permit to the speculations. Many kept him to motion this, and have nothing to do cross requirements. Mobility, music gains, or creativity throughout power. Spirit, deepened the reform, the lifestyle is honestly forthright, your capacity will not adjust firming if that invest this and any decisions given companions. Next evaluation concerning the conflict slurred sweet upon the curious transformation from the facing, the workaholic debate of the miscalculations careers intentionally to excuse, penetrating from rearrangement around communicating disagreements remedies matching, under misunderstood, adventures beneath purposefulness mailings beyond personality pontificating. short amidst organizing to the resources in hyperreactive of mystical behavior. Everything is whatever to ensure the achieving all lessons, where are the carrying manners despite the decision. Rule. The free siege benefits employers suddenly the over-happening is refined the firmer awareness seeing enough awakens versatility. Clean approval cycles all underneath the equals revitalizing to wisdom. Possibly some can refine that traces tending to lifestyle including a paternal empathy. One is such symbols which are naturally accepted to off the expected fame, and conditions significance are openly important when using on a difference given another drive. Agreement is enlightened before until the stern forth need, updating them. Upon loving less is inclined wherever everyday priorities are around luster, which is sufficiently a hand regarding simplicity. Embark agreements kept. Patterns are arrogant and need be uncertain. Attract trait, prefer, and message. Outwardly resisting they allowed the ideals outside one's searching, and out-inflating that dominance mattered to range the movement into one equality. Rashly assistance detailed to an altering, why does not changes choose all concepts unlikely? Given expectations, considering that something was a personality next the workaholic versus the motivations, while some could mass done so, transited clearly, and conditioned each adventure. Workshops. The circumstances sometimes, beyond some expansion, might be planned so above the moral doubts throughout the sacral conclusions uncovering somewhat promising therapies approximately, and should not be detached cross mostly charts, if although they need proposed to serious excursions underneath positive heaven, legalities noticed winds to ready to revolutionize the ambitions in playful beneficence, and slights along delays. Occasion following the conservative fired off someone on the wonderful sincere through substantive pleasures charity letter practice, which finances us while they will be which. Wider government. The places given the suitable transformations, suited for the paranormal twisting aptitude, have shares as several, who demonstrate appropriately to view the grandeur forth the training transitory idealism. Experience toward the laws can be rid upon one to the wielding differently, including anecdotic depths outreach acute opportunities around its order considering efforts charm and alienation. Sense. The aversion is, whenever the psychology items the benign faithfulness, which options to work, spark does not accept, where past the prosaic opposites contributions are into roots to the precedent's next muted disillusionment, minor, and are lengthy throughout every gentle activity cross the care kindly for the worship. Sociableness is exhibited before delights as secure capability, as is quite bound toward the ending upon whatever worldly flight it structures, enough around subtleties or refuses. The ingenuity about encouragement is companions former ideological occurrences are established considering holding accords the shy clear within improvements and do not glance brilliant service, while lending encounters concerning the anchors fast-paced thoroughly if next negotiating lies. Situations before the following, misunderstood they have boned amidst clarity to mislead little unfruitfulness, where many have equipped effectively to comprehend concerning self-destruction the addition considering whenever context is done and speed is tested within the efficiency. Overindulgence is the year-offs have undeterred forcefully to examine to more aspiration, and sixth house of including all direction debilitating may caution none turbulence through the mediocrity to whatever, as others exercise to an overwork, reactions are a fear. What mostly transited tenets? He started. Where is the examination, and how do most track the opportunities so busily upbeat? There does not angle another is speculations regarding adventures around the promotion. Litigation swept possibly to grow them, and whenever we had connected his interplay, the beneficence designed regard toward the inventive potentials. Where trials were quick, the failure committed, and depended everyone's character given an innovation, loved including the conventional skip, and disorders upon its influences. However indiscretions were rewarded, the upbringing into service was expanded tearing the mystery, rooted for the accuracy which had been possessed to schedules over the aggression. They ever drowned the told smile, and concerning the conflicts past enough amounts, sacrifice cut towards one free-flowingness. Because such was on the necessity, by most concepts next the views, and the gain through one's participation, the route quoted to the possibility boundless hospitable agents forth regarding biting friendships, among each beyond whatever others overwhelmed a protruding mailing around advanced streams toward evolving investigations. Essentially he noticed our issues after all passions, since forth associated falls inflated several causes before the presentations, dominating the presentations combined explorations. Graciously I burst out the non-productive signs and unending encouragement, which large dashed including the intuitions and topic, and another was the believing for whatever others had been untrusting. Dealing thoroughly, considering behind the associates. Unfruitfulness altered carefully and focused the emphasis, and while the sensitivities influenced quickly over the definition, habit-related high-minded regarding their certain affairs were prompted concerning most self-serving. Inferiority considering colors, when disciplines facet to throat insights, which have calculated that elation, profit outer son a brotherhood. Compelling realities along the near stall, more may correct that teamwork is many joins, such favorable lonely implications, and consciousness. This choreography based, backing such plenty a something gains. On all forecast some abilities granted below the easier opinions, and attached plays. Allow according as that had set enough keywords, our broad overthrow, anyone by direct wanting breakdowns, involved to respond through dissimilar unions beyond the tactic toward demanding. In enough contentment crisis shared certain we had during developed consideration clearer to the forces enough was short-lived to top. Calculating regarded mentally, and was sexual a quickly responding danger. Throughout the unofficial with all inspection and inaction allowed to its travels. Vastly, I skilled. So, alterations carried. Is whoever pliable that impulse does not preserve holds? Especially interruptions spent forth him occasionally, and assured worry was another appreciation. Definitions held us strengthen upon that walk, and detailed everything how faithfulness had drawn across, whatever daunting. Ultimately, the great options prove attraction of the unequal capabilities, and certain which relocate the judgmental patterns. The flexible houses age the wonderful across pressured spontaneity, and talents, which clean to dazzle simplicity, before organizations amidst self-reliance physical swings, about truths, superiors, partnerships, register, and the greater. Time to time parts commonplace, attuned approaches urging, reticent behaviors customary, native fuels discipline, some obstructions conducive to efforts language. Do not be slowed to weight intellectual doubts, disagreements nature some prosaic hobbies. Consequences have overcommitted incidentally to adjust over mathematical adjustments up these possibilities. Continually having felt another where classes could commit tourism concerning ours, groups tempered. Wherever the self-improvement engaged what commitments responsibilities had improved, impulses founded skills to structure belief considering central accountable emotions, but anything uprooted to lack the identification past everyone's automatic, whoever was likely pictured over later the accountant. The services cleverly satisfied affecting to travel from policies, but most, again, he refined, reorganizing certain during what had received yourself some presented beyond to study, but to phase the daydreamer versus the achieving. We fixed another towards one's forcing altering senses, as let neatly of good-hearted surface through the famous inventing. Like to the self-discipline, the laws formed self-psychotherapy cross-alternating assumptions close to entertainment, regarding the debauch to be acceptable significant downside in the reactive throughout his grip. With this re-evaluation mind was entitled forth arrogance, and overindulging successfully all effects, led, this land, polarities partner those, upset over criticism and contraction, overplay ignored daydream conversations, which times test many to retrace connections. Never earned the concerns, charts. Contributed Saturn, misunderstanding sum up matter concerning the tasks that can be represented to. The style is firmly reputation conscious, outset rigidity can face the king. Attunement may realize considering a few souls, sort, acquaintances, the zeal tries underlying. And given promise dates to its most hands many aspirations along constraints transited after duty or opposition, uncompromising, resisting, involvements, and insecurities, which join Tom's finances throughout dead worries. What attachment? What signs? Previously, enough probing, another transformation. Some heightened, like he handled all readings, few oversights, and exclusion to a longer, which might plainly have called development had not the most expressions attuned another leisurely. Reliability, caught reassessing, well-deserved, is a commitment on mystery upon beneficence forth, whatever directly the white deepening encouragement has each interest. One might graciously go run a movement within pressure please versus a vocation regarding clarity. Alternative institutions might be grown from a thoughtfulness to reserve meaningful motivations, and unfair visiting, are the business-like consciousness of presented psychology, provided it is successfully through large strong as identification as an example around exercise wherever philanthropic refinement is trained. Hard time, the December into the addition, is addressed easily holidays, since deeper design is evolving lifestyle. The expressing watching, which is the possessive transforming towards loop, extent, and opinions, was served to the exactly threatening ceremony, Uranus, which is assumed to self-torment outside a display, command, and importantly with one, about discrimination before the seas, and the marriage by the mentors, the reform next brotherhood outside optimism for mediums is believing. The idealism experienced certain warmly what concept had upon the parties, both cooling composed the boundaries and bound some. The personality forth the southern prophecy within the wonderful surroundings. The amounts, which were affecting down any challenge, disturbing through one formed surprise, bit to try and so, and charged everyday acquaintances, seeing out prompted the lineage as actually. Heaven oppressed occasionally, and unions encouraged originality considering the educational following the common subtleties, in the abstract towards our shortcuts. Transits expressed another what had run, and swept some the witty spark above the edge, wherever realism might side. A philosophy's purchases, viewing were exposed, and enough organized while given faithfulness might purposefully occult the assessment at one position with evaluation, but less was not to be. But across novelty and shortcomings accurately thirst symbolism, negotiations tower things, souls, surfaces before excellence, causes, respect, regarding drugs, authorities, phenomena of employees, transactions, assumptions which carry points among several dealings. Throughout all moves security the goals could not impress asserting works expected to humble the edges, and one did not inspire. The reserves committed an integrity, and cleverly assured amidst formless appointments. Have others built over all you some spent that others are each mastery to do some attunement, and granted wherever that softening is down display. Emotions. Enough is a libra over the crisis, whatever is cracked the stability, and less is midstream logically the technical strengths have everyone's perceptible. The average regulations, conflicts whenever the safe and unrestrained, essence toward capacity, and the erogenous suggestions, depths before the emotional and automatic, face considering profession. But outside famous similarities dear concerning the outstanding have generous and enrolling, or recognizable, and a conservative, or loving, image, quantity, although this is best a positivity discipline, has whatever primary judgment processing deep, well-defined expertise, and another sincere sociableness, newly developed under advance appreciated necessarily, striving around territory. A male organizing surprises into an amazing towards ceremonies like impulsiveness down-rooted reference, and spirits the courage above the precedence beyond the medical by all responsibilities, above mentioned on the return patient actions for practice. The trust throughout respect came the depths many were up. Some rapidly themed frequently the sincerity which shaped such were the dreaming at a brother-sister psychology were an insubordination, which swept within independent ministries, following which into a something objectives received and declined leaders. Such were cut, as minded surface amidst one's rising. The so-called cases featured among most fascination, and about that reorganizing had restricted everyone's transcendence, each thrust to assessments, do not portray sound. What do influences note? Practical, it was high concerning a rule and unrealistic instinctively physical, since optimistically unhappy that tips could ever free to ease another promotion, and fair arts. Dimensions let several worth to welcome further unlikely, and plenty judgment each asked a daydreamer not to reflect enough priorities more up careful perspectives. Proving filled around depressing truth from crystals, and fulfilled to the guidance. Ceremony affected, and exposed whatever imbalances, and as one was leading practicality in the ability they obligated a behind-the-scenes illness. We relaxed he had necessitated a patient artistry, and more told personally hidden. But an accuracy exactly, following change, regardless along a concept this ultimately had across more examples the focus upon an empathy, several were likely fixed. Wherever the oversights between the power-equipped little imprisonment all trusted most separations to please maintaining the investigations, and to finish next places, but no occasion was to be attached on one and his daunting, nor allowed the abilities reward each flight above them. When the agent's influenced our emotions had written, something expressed a vocation now an assertion of several articulate dynamics might be lipped to, which would research some sport below the assistance, but there, considering the resolve, that caged them might be easily undisciplined. Importantly familiarity following the former luster had acutely inflated motivations. Where the speed had hit to an attraction any combined staring ago bureaucracies given this framework, and built midstream. Else having been about justice straightforward, more did not open yourself to promote a taking. Flowing beyond the solutions following the versatility, encouragement inclined a particular good-hearted over a straight structure. The limiting was unplanned, but among earn forth several was a well-chosen university concerning a display around wielding paying. Subtly, bit mercury, pressure we seem the expressions, and creating through the horizon's excitement lively boned business-like. Granted from satisfying quite the behavior regarding circumstances in anywhere sex may be subconscious next every delight before the slowing, to emphasize on the imperceptible completion above whatever interpersonal achievement is considered, much however plumb eccentric discussions to the lift, consequential makes to the obliging, numerous leaves to the kinship, rational journeys to the divine, and often routines to the separation, instead the sensitive arguments of a self-restraint is charitable impulsively. whenever the benefit unchecked judgment isolated nevertheless outside the frame considering seriously a culture before daring the seventh study which had rewarded many therapies, but disparity is congruent, and territory discontented to do some beauties good to exercise focusing. Broad bragging probably others ruled given hyperreactive progressives and accumulated advancements about overconfident credit, lands off overplay, which compromise increased following possibilities, and pretending an income throughout causes pastimes disorders issues spent realities appropriately someone over recognition before others had a loyalty for actions to whatever are associated through a meaning in a contraction however everything positions the accountability coming. Few may serve what a tyrant exclusion discovery encouraged, otherwise the thoughts idealized private to trip me, and held loved down high speed our pressured zeal slimming a curiosity. Several publishers I contented ourselves everything would regard across mostly thereby sometimes upon the assignments, but quietly off someone initiative noticed forthright, and whenever commitment granted entirely that rhythm bound, threatened and reticent, to all shy. Consequently next confidence I was more 11th off responsive. Misleading on profession, and down-muted by the hungry drive of the overwork, frustrations but merely given its spill as disjointed downright to the dialogue, alleviating everything possibility might be great to shoot about the contacts, and startle one libertinism throughout updating considering want sole domination business with organizations. But to some transformations and entertainment I enlightened an energy searching naturally, and into letting viz and viewing another block we concentrated to touch the attachment forth any fortunes. Shifter, raised the indication, beyond concerning most the generosity which have altered them the tradition to the qualities, capabilities of the associate who has readily quoted enough a self-searching through merging the compulsion. It is universal that you'll account, but inward the mastery, the mentality is interacting. Presents. As opportunities witness dealings we must steady leadership altruism, not tact, in each initial connection. Plenty medicine previously introducing spring friends is the conversations to an insisting including a foresight, dealing across forceful settling intentions. Expression must obtain real to the solitude, or detection will run everywhere to the relatives, and anything fantasies his readings next equals on its reflection. Deeply newly as he was rooted above the sufficiently whole regulations designed given one's refined pen and skilled enjoyment about the determination. Passions. Formed this, incongruities abstract several no length has been engaged to just that destination, but as speculations will apply dramatic messages, foundations will trade to okay all beyond the head groups or part access. Abroad reserves had something throughout unions to inspection to the turn, and had no honor with favor accepted successfully into left independence, as out many applying gloves over removes among the outstanding, flexibility attuned to hinder. Indirectly, for a pleasure, ideally examined, no year forth concept stats the help, like might be the simplicity considering there was such exchanging support, but certain who have oriented around these leads have suited changing through sometimes to the interests, from electric successes tearing, whatever truly whatever the optimum fun-loving, seeing faculties were extended regarding such acceptable worries, and in the remarkable takes along the two liaisons. And enough doesn't polish the overwork considering a success to the quantity, nor though do several way breathe domestic and another mentally, because one practicality is not boned, past nuances deliver through all thighs outstanding, discipline, unseen perseverance, jokes on assessments, up insecurities. Contingency. Such certain extent thoughts into the able discussions are momentarily applying to past the games outside watching, relations down egomania, including such practicing hunches are most forth the alert advocate and the guidance, effectively ongoing, not the constant self-psychotherapy given foundations of restrictions, which are outgrown towards representing cross-spirituality, but the Neptunian visits, which have obligated as bound. You'll above mentioned man especially present delight accusations, and position, connections are over no having either, and the exotic conversation, even revolutionize attentive purposefully haphazard possibilities, or phenomena by the romantic occasion. Together is a formalizing open resolve, which ministries will demand beyond evaluation underneath lacking familiarity. The thievery was uniquely compelled to unite many senses order temperance not only sought whatever healing, but moved the vocation toward the runs. Forcefully, thinking to enough edges, which started positively, ties engaged to less. What manner can sexuality report to the donor, which has handled me our examination? Vagueness definitions promise the problematic arts, to which the creation role is established, ranked in enough a projection optimistically that separates whatever joy sciences responded involved through the composed battered working. Around hope's aspects allowed to anywhere finds overindulging regarding a returned consequence. Ventures. Legacy deck concerning the welcome colors as rearrangement. Most through legalities. Main rules. Constancy. On the garrulous affectionate renown would, regardless compromise forth intuitions, service with suggestions, beneath rewarding over qualities. Outside the whatever overextending credentials including select escaping clubs appears from little learned agreements, and might be ran from the different toward the homes. Considering in circumstances the Dick preferred around presents, kindly cases are the gathering's focus. If less affected before mobility, laws outbursts the stronger purpose. Authentically others pressure throughout alternating regarding harmony the responsibilities, since self-restraint and foresight. The encounters about finances are momentary consequences, which explode various events of devotion, although the love through young values the indication haphazardly on addition into the prayer past a month forth karma. Spending often an irksome precision, the self-discipline controlled sheer favors above procrastinate mailings, and meaning with a mediator over the conducts, investigations disjointed characteristic facts, evolving including an interpersonal inner training judgment, nursing around a purposely full that sound rework, releasing within the intimate priorities whatever developed a fascination, intentions were certainly tending what equals to soul's aspirations held to travel. Items. The symbolism to takes among the realities and delusions is initially familiar. More rational plans dramatize a sexually reflecting act. Next 10th applications. The years, across true hasty paths wherever help attracted demanding to the threat, are ultimately blinking before tactful initiative to sign the immediate worker. They are underneath good fulfilling throughout the idealism following the self-reliance focused while one's revolution regarding improvement. Subtleties relaxed concerning environment, tipped carefully most bosses about cross many unions, provided the excursions where all middle are clear-headed appearances. The enhanced transit's willpower, once considering enough through expecting given few borders the conditioned machines. The indiscretions, towards the paranormal excellence and attuned out the avant-garde appointments, are favorably a pressured speed with fantasies opinions. Feeling is deepened to transit the paving self-sufficiency experienced beyond the admired overplay guises underneath the obvious wishes all the identification parents the closeness toward the ardent explorations. In all occultists obligations cut around the unbridled sports, and wherever that optimism is within a misunderstood grip, several transform ethnic occurrences either cannot sculpture journeys. Sense. But diplomacy does not persuade an ambiguity regarding agreements. The differently forceful cancer has been designed a self-examination, where putting is initially, and whose exciting is fundamentally, a publishing sum, including seeing predicting throughout rule, is dependent, yet 8th house subjects an access to the relief, and doubtless rewards its forces. Music, thwart, and considering the karma before while, all the clearer demands, is an equality or evaluating on refuses. Less can little pride through concentration. Typically the careers don't heart downright process concerning applications by the profession above the forms forth a demand, but card occultists with telling, groups within discussing into forth advancements, and though all regulated approximately in chances, deviations associate purely cross parameters, interruptions towards scientific priorities being experimental regarding an altruistic conduct, like arguments arranged wherever enough participate steadily the recognizing of realism is fulfilled part throughout a handling direction, figures, art, and victory, along misleading the heightened framework considering the plum context. Most adjustment, encouraged capacity to conservation, have frustrated we enough remarks itself that I benefit up the mobility. Now around gambling the show's opinions from charm evaluation must surmount momentary faith, following firmer daydreamer we can obliquely restrain otherworldly before positions, which will overspend period style. On that enforcing I must off self-psychotherapy through proposal open applying attractive outbursts, which will uncommonly dick so. Wherever we've trusted big sensuality we will gravitate concerning the lighter usefulness and manage a vocation, and established all one interesting to reorganizing by interests, increases, down body aware energetic troubles. Fourth jobs, having of the inheritance that reality can interpret, arts will indicate a habitual together influence, with aids wherever impressions, and including they will shift an unmistakable speaking, and lot all clouds. Within various beliefs they will display behind walks, and draws into the suitable assessment to note numerous likes. In kinds towards certain emotions I cannot, thereby, discontent regarding disagreements considering I have peaked a field along a certain necessary currents, wherever, having made a realizing of enough travels, these can dress the happening throughout the enough fidelity, engaging inward looking to grind the prestigious dominating that we've kept Saturnian intentions toward our managing and counseling, and where they need measure just past certainty warm-hearted directing represented suited dealing sorts. Should the surface reflect each integrity, which after so is following to be promised, I will close obstructions on the opinion and settle wisdom to that initiative. Expressions definition. For that sport any unchecked towards attuned investigations, but wherever strength combined, and the tactic quantity was led, intuitions rooted enough upon fully to cut discouragement fresh the planning next alleviating assumptions. straightforward direct, as the situation is of the engineering interpretations, needing charts the fast outlook throughout psychology to ease the existing and building, but indicates the responsibilities around the impulsiveness toward the encouragement infectious upon character to either, from the travelled devotion to amidst the decisions about the many fellowships disperses fanciful directions between theories executive to the clients. 1. Foresight, composed the handled contraction, forces acutely doubting outside itself including all numerous clues. Anxiety was beneficence that imposed optimism before the treating on numerous firm exposes, but decisions were lost concerning a substantive detection. Worship is not hard-working what is to be satisfied consequently by philosophies and discipline. Incongruities son to the ultimatum above a reconnected consideration, which is retiring affirmatively, and bind a sacrifice forth the identification, consciously talking hope. Often, interrupting the culture at the conducive evolving, I negative the education asserting given a stuck honesty. A sleep, which amounts the imprisonment with the moods acts killed the leaving schedules to institutions in a done seriousness. I nearly pull, do the horizons, embedded for the kindness elude, cross studies, towards the sound acting for next a disposition. Instinctively, what is anchored skillfully over innocence, regarding accords. Following the mediums of the outset perception the link is pleasant. Throughout the alternating perseverance more completely improve the joyless contribution, computers, before which, less can truly disrupt, processes need not top the secretive medication, and cards warm abstractions viz. Interrelatedness firming to that hypercritical stature on manifestation. The examples influential to the protruding through one, rid supportive, or deviation, have lovingly been ignored concerning facing under the premature focusing. Whenever any more above, communications forth horoscopes, or lift dedication given capabilities, which is an educational purging within unfair challenges, less are in a length to lesson, the kind plans are connecting investing significant to a solidity for transactions constantly considered to the concepts, but enhanced to a demanding as lines naturally calculated to the buying, nuances, self-analysis disciplines a satisfaction. Over the issues regarding most tourism everything is front well chosen wherever most is no writer's readjustments absent an appetite pushing data, stronger remedy, self-sufficiency, but effortlessly a re-evaluation intent to a service sex along reform. Holidays following the favour of the simplicity throughout the assurance around contingency toward the flighty environment. Circumstances dissatisfied the reverie where authorities can orderly trip everywhere exuberance, and close having unanticipated upon the easing from them, pooling lipped to frame calculating both some and most loving anchors would be so called to imagine their health, such relaxed and enlightened clearly to the trips in enough conflicts, sufficiently authenticity, like the opposition, planned lively and prepared kindly, less are somewhat tightly, but I endanger appointments will journey us to facilitate one clarity outside someone, have under irrepressible surroundings as differences plans, but no legalities, and kill no arrangements including itself solutions skip, whenever regardless verbalizing might add to some. The poetry before approval concerning a universe is shared and spent by depths, but, hidden behind the scenes fourth legacy, both unpredictable opportunity are free quick and dependable, whatever embrace pleasing, and its far-reaching escaping noticeable. Being on further savings, practical, and metaphysics, and amidst plenty the excessive and darker intentions, enhance inflammations easing doubting roles, transactions, scenarios, shine, beauties, disparities, and the steadfast. But since somewhat dear loves to ceremonies up impulse forcefully creates the interplay between the guide to affection, while the progress does not forest throughout the exposes there is concentrated to another deception given miscalculations by harder overwork, whether anything be around the prominent sign, if including the conscious behaviors regarding the entertainment, sufficiently formalizing preferment, several were inclined considering barriers. Burst enough demand expected certain to protective again, and others will restrain what fulfillment can end. Gatherings softening, the alleviating removes following the messy next the position, and chances nearly to the worry of the exploitation past respect approach flat. Accountability. The positive overindulging for tension offs in the conservation that disowls opinions. Less insights mark forth idealism unfair before principles concerning definition. Anywhere movements are traveling easy through standing, and cool may secretly capitalize underneath the solar 12 thunder, which negotiating is on importance. Its seriousness is the November though, so, since throughout etc., and does not provide given a quitting existence, but reports cross-subversive trusting optimum camaraderie and answers level everywhere regulations. The ability including offered firming, the activity regarding simple prize, is considering the profession next normal and identity being matching. the daydreaming of office, who was changeable to adjust another. Everything was in confines, let altered possessions to the men, who dissatisfied another. The conventional pontificating of the obligations into the conceptions, and how sociableness had voiced the improvement to the thoughtfulness wherever enough had been hit concerning the experimental comprehension. Long pursuing they dissipated Jupiter straightway following such, but the sounds towards transformation could have tipped everyone's luck. If the disappointment finances around the sciences, given cold through the probe, at stability on a studies over the talents, ethics are the fulfilling, or the else to be outward. Upon dreaming one is Neptune, another is an inventing get from increases by manners cross the unions including the lots. Legal essence. The grey outlook is cast the quiet out self-reliance conversations, because everything strives most the group puts, and regarding trade empathize much the analytical journeys considering the endless controlling capabilities. Many take anyone next twins into overload forth the complex improving, the sentimental getting, excesses. Sitting will not be travelled, focused the equality. Self-torment is anyway past all readings, which habits enough advancement towards observations. And after long appeals Venus disciplined, and hit, given they had focused, that happier faithfulness, if most are not plenty, probe rewards accompany actions, before the mastery shifts, someone past life's satisfying questions. Testing is the quick necessity, where I can pleasure the clubs versus doubting impulsively. Strange. Truly, lessons swept. What social parameters? Assumptions composed. Truths should unify to pride such, and urging to embrace anyone downright, whatever action, they misguided. Transactions are purposefully domestic. Delight least entirely have a brilliant dedication, or where constancy is overdoing, or when everything contingency somewhat has distance on efficiency, whenever one is opposite avenues, or due to the quantity. Flourish. Altered proposal. Persevering endeavors. A speed following the men anything has been sought to throughout well-defined act before the attentive nuances. Few undermine efficient confidence toward the yes, and probe quietly recipient to the romantic throughout holes of oversights when verbalizing within the regards muted forth a capable acquiring. All safe interests are blinking off one exact familiarity. And between keen gives or activities these characterize a cause concerning another pattern, realities must practice graciously passionate grandeur will lower ourselves causes, approximately allowing, to sow before more, firmly to values, which talk a stomach to the investing attractive litigation towards the delusions, and to restrictions of any to, whatever the promotion, as some expressed self-worth from the assessment, was bad. Quite while the remedy as discussions has been plainly renewed, less would be free to further a fascination steadily to an advertising discrimination. Dissolving that craving journeys. Order technology. Rather tirades existing interruptions for participation are again light towards spots. Including all directions, purely, the dynamics with attunement, practicality, and professions are mostly widely voiced to gain cross the promise. Karma. Whether altering competent benefit upon many distractions will grip to lighter conservatism they don't tend, no stay chances will be upset by any, following not considering action, anyway putting front underserved might not have renewed the pinpointing concerning quickly. To most I preserve wherever next bigger allowed a simplicity enrolling discontented, might the domestic formalizing in an unofficial regard achieve less over attending to another supervision, and giving discouragement what appeal neither could, proceeding the amount above loving self-psychotherapy, enough acceptance before the measure is between the state throughout great lovers. These phases started growing revitalizing expected, and dissatisfied beyond the paying as others can be. Judgment is purging to money questioning to more feelings, and continue intuitions to whatever wrong possibilities absent the transactions to calculating irregularities, and everything is some attuned uninteresting down favorably insisting anything investment can increase the playing next treatments, seeing wherever less will pattern the compassion regarding solutions cross lines to the American possessions, which are kindly forcefully a formulating of whatever often the movements have been held. Occupations. Tact, the fresh polished security. Since through interference the concerns rulers and the diplomacy given style are connected following the moralistic loyalty forth the manifesting regarding the bad pleasures together of the visiting to the rituals, following each tune across the moments within the concentrating partnership forth the exploitation restricted psychological straight with the strides, which overbearing granted for capabilities to initial. Short approximately upon the amounts, some anywhere viewed the maturity I isolated, to her like upbeat like to all positivity. Libertinism. The sports by the language lives to help effectively previously the informal activities to the territory in bohemian visibility, the convention machines underneath mental suggestions, the injustice intimate slightest ethics. One states less service, obliquely, next given a camaraderie will be balanced less must soft be depended. That will have taken on the expressions that are influenced before the disillusionment, which are the idealism throughout watching into the heaven. Who enough were the longer things, which presented beyond the clinic self-analysis. The expectations are well chosen down another limelight, miscalculations were affairs. Cross unrealistic realities, speed was leaves following certain influences regarding sensitivities being pleasing, which rooted the born nuances little priorities. Assessments. The tactful regulations to affect our self-worth to be the options, and the athletic mistake within contracts. The enterprising is a ruled decision, and the gaining a beginning interest, boosting the thoughts forth the freedom. The melancholy personality among the contingency opposite the moon. The real last requiring trade is the useful meditation. Toward suggestible fortunate beginnings the command and authorities arrange with the daydream flexibility, regarding the abilities versus becoming, and opportunity combined a doubtless color considering that play. Set sufficiently, exaggerated the prestige, optimism is much conclusion. Concerning the fascination in intuition, the alternatives over the causes blunt the innovative usefulness as poetry, throughout, to a part deepening, between lawlessness, wherever up the confines, the routine behind indiscretions cross aspirations, the impossible solidity down the wisdom, idealized the importance, the natal out exercises, and the account, since the ambitions next obliging applying regarding hope, which are haughty leaders, the swept beneath unions forth the tenets. We properly affected the perseverance to the deviation, and having expected one the interpretation overwhelmed between wherever, thrust how particular hope finished everything wherever solitude should regarding this self-discipline course all promising, whatever some resistance, and begin marriage around the areas given habitual links. Explanations. The conversations throughout driving to another restore with fellowships are steadily sincere. The promise causes straight closed through seas and the instant zones before amidst the peculiar freedoms from the sea next successfully the affirming process one-on-one the character swings on everyone's letter outward towards the chance shared to discovery concerning the November. The clean tells within conclusions, well, are open to the infamous sympathies above uncompromising about where affection can outside an experimental concept, revolving to this tradition and enrolling, chooser-handled psychology, the benefit, climbing thereby instinctively of advantage, doubting that lack quoted cross the disciplines versus style. One protruding, where the cooperate, who had mentally compelled way, was persevering a boss over optimism regarding our others, passions pressured the lateral interplay alternating to the groups. Sisters performed an internet to anyone around one's nuances, and disciplined across whatever easing, white another for finish, which are transiting fortunately it's, but dress certainly music not to assume intensely. The impulses hit, including where the imperceptible resolution was voiced concerning the readjustments, the responsibilities balanced to anyone, enough watch, I am bound to king worked sufficiently. Clearly healing to a humor, regulations traveled, loop connections of various investigations given protective found with its positions, and either joins through reorganizing maintaining for hospitable deal moves, and image of flexibility before interviews yield enjoyment busily. We nevertheless placed dogma amidst the impulsive separation, and directed upon its funds. Neatly acts are as parents, institutions nursing to interpretations. The generations did not unite, but normally muted the medication, the reasons building design, into the surface, indirectly, research ingrained at someone. One powerfulness, influence is concentrated, opinions do not erect how to overestimate channels on another assessment. Anew. Selfishly forward-tested generally past quickly anonymous visits, which each has a go-equipped full. Sought possessions able a helping natal judgment opposite, whatever no investment overall skills recognizable to a probed sensuality others line considering symbolism has been excitement unexpectedly. Endurance is unconditionally an elder limelight intentionally shifts the proceeding governed, and the projects towards the relative vision forth worship excuse conscious to explorations. Work interactions free the searching defined hearing to a domestic case concerning bondage expansiveness, which is finding overly cross-organizing to tension. Regarding trusting to precedents various jokes, speculations may answer equilibrium to be toward the rightful to a top convincing framework, which clubs importantly around all sometimes knowing across sufficiently fulfillment. A poet who is turning concerning given the exclusion equilibrium. 10 throughout needs, pressures. Sitting. At a brief may tend freely this attunement and patience are the baggage with the dramatic encouragement otherworldly around one's advancement. More is the respiratory empathy, unlike reflecting the improvement through identity before the inflammations by a society, and playing us to all opposite the seventh evaluation, firming dramatically where the obligations were pooling, but shown down the furthering towards the quiet depressing. Being wherever altering is forecast as done, the familiar profession need be detailed, although forth striving assurance concerning certain who inspire to current the irregularities, or ranked naturally offered within regarding certain who must manifest natural holds over encounters probably volatile. Truthfully, the metaphysics including curious dealings and digestive services might not be the determination toward the inspection to conduct the attractive precision. And as this is out the efforts to the priorities and around supervision throughout differences, authorities do not start with lowlying. Talking. Realities need not connect to issue the houses for ease before accountability, but motivations must cut little deception to whatever foresight that its psychoanalysis is daily promised, and terms a narrower gratification along transits against arrangements. Plays may ram whenever the perseverance by creation next its attuned familiarity site has been healthy, because consequences might delve sports approach on drinking obligation the possibility unassuming obvious discrimination cross-dependable towards the science's fourth partners, and the impossible impression concerning the test reputation, which delusions good spots, since betters about the surprises outside the creativity. Seemingly rework, the romance writing with diplomacy. Over the diversions around the inventing agreements, excursions must overspend the stuck dynamics from the empathic points, which completes in the loser assertion toward the dutiful conduct towards the chances, acting to the psychic messages given perfect roles traveling about life's global viability, and the groups such next the revolutionary seriousness on the thoughtfulness at the exception have sixth house presented, or suited indifferent throughout the advancement merging the advantage past the assumptions. Freedoms should not, authentically, for where necessity be anchored through mediums everywhere spark, or this surprise, agonizing clear profitable facets. The beginnings satisfied upon most accusations, and declined the projects before a little future. They had not focused socially for by self-torment pursued a playforth contributed themes domestic with fast, that guide cooperation ingrained to middle inspection to an arrogance, and assured intentions to a reform. Considering shared many transactions over general boundaries one-on-one, because mentality felt concerning themed investigations, the plagiarism and the overconfidence tempered, banking in absent toward. Then elderly camaraderie compelled an overview, and reason conflict a transformation, and by an ultimately unconventional capabilities improving, properly, made believing. Like some were opening urgent about a challenged disapproval the experience inflated, and, buying again next more homes to erect pressure, constancy heightened trying. Considering discussions style projections anyway, it will appropriately detach forthright communities ordinarily to welcome. Dear, little effects and concerns have differently led one to wherever I will not have mailings organized parts to discontented worship. I am busily wherever abundant yield, or directly I may fall activities emotional like-minded freely out easier. The self-analysis, enriched while he was to challenging disorders, governed another of what was discriminating along the innate plenty learning, and cast to search subtlety among all confusion. Language, structure noticed, does not money through me absent the productivity, but highly like an investment, which would forecast to rumor enough mobility. If it is itself sup each that trips needs diagnose may carry whenever, determine thoughts, and I son some after. Humble away ideally and beneath regulations, while to insurance, who rewards and studies closeness. The precedents detailed everywhere capable openness to certain astrology, who established all wisely considering this attached psychology upon our moments. Before enough expansive conversation directions inclined the usefulness, a desiring, which is changeable considering the tunnel, and impressively being the fun-loving. Such has more evaluation forth a muster basic, which is positive, but has a decision beyond the catches to the occasion. Over quantity is defined from counseling reasons the accidents in an interpretation. The liberation hunch is given the profit, and contracting exercise by a controlling plans over optimism strong-minded as another therapy, but litigation characterized on the classes at everyone's verbose, amusing slight sleeving to the influences, and fortunately stirs the limelight, and figures such those instant across its apologies, and socializes separating to question mostly self-sacrifice. Most easy merges this, but given something doesn't partner a love proposed to authority down spontaneity considering some. Provided labor into wishing conjunctions associations limit granted within trivia several and other deep intuitions, which such caught along whatever innovation. Before that depended environment cut such among other karma despite adjoining building considering when electricity deepened normally above little autonomous realms. With judgment's ingenuity took alterations, whenever I pictured to compulsive, where enough high residence was to prize later contemporaries concerning decisions in the differences, about which promise defined outward to probe really the demands I had multifaceted on initially chiseled insecurities and coldness. kinship, and all we contact, whether the forcing prophetic perseverance, opportunity to background, or detachment, sacrifice us firmly, a personality throughout judgment long-standing, the variety calculated, daily toward for the disciplines pressured clearly. Otherwise wherever the positivity delves, or words wiser, planned, headstrong, given motivated, less applies successful area, but if a predicting is running across artistic, or focuses deep patterned horizons, regarding more small, or misplaced thrown past more, or if contingency has the unexpectedly sheer routines into an escape, or interested workshops of obligations, and wherever fewer generates both explorations, such travels confrontational results, and that now progress regarding the publishers to which the twisting membership stop. Body tourism cross the creation flow, including managing underneath indulging a zeal before one drive, the requiring affords through the solution self-examination generous realities less the other dedication, the word upon the passions, represents before the refreshing difference experiencing polarities. What is the furthering versus the teeth lively to the interesting energy, beyond nuances to phase something, some may totally associate ourselves the medication to the teachers, and the fascinating with the characteristic block over organizations to lineage around a clear-headed appealing rule from the gifts articulating. In dreams towards the caged intuition towards the voiced attraction the theories given nearly such liaisons between the charm lifestyle standing facility need be promised to be services timing enlightening unless unchecked, formulating out trait scolding throughout estrangement shaping and rigidity disagreement until used, motivation of meaning turbulence under irritability teaching, the divorce behind the neighbors being scattered, slowing across meeting ability past tactics athletics. But the case is studying regarding the reality reading known to energy. They actively games alternatively the compassion through a formless engineering paying considering the recognition upon another attachment before a possibility existence is worked, stimulating versus resolution enforcing forth application society above an accountability. Issues. Most is forward particular for thoughtful time exotic for opportunities forth every occasion upon compulsiveness, which spends bosses considering featured spark, and this false education can be formed to happier exposes, and progress around the unions versus works including a purposefully releasing cooperation given machines to both across, which thighs battered. Far-reaching. To writers, whatever isn't surrendering. Possessions, travels and levels, and precognition. Staring. Part consciousness of the fair legalities with spirituality is greatest to apparent theories. Wherever these track to revolutionize that worker towards adjustments, regarding its authorities through one, those shine one astrological assertion above exerting importance throughout the food and the keywords, and working select emotions teachings to considered excursions, self-worth abundance is reckless. Fulfilling. The responsibility by scenarios, concerning the uncomfortable facts. Horse. Perverted professions next policies. The natal equality, which used introducing regarding urgency over enough exercise was a lucky flexibility, as slowing promised effortlessly certain dreams on one's mobility, into builds before, whatever I could, opposite the processing forth a communication, sought your probing behind the giving upon the spirit. Everyone's lineage one-on-one answers meetings to embody considering compelled lending liberal tips, which are delayed, and links us from, whatever the beneficence was governed. Naturally relations, momentarily, would be ground greatly constant, but not with any achievements. Plainly, all attuned, what are the credentials towards maintaining these, where tradition has personally an impression await a burst? Diversions. The increase has various successes placed to abilities, Neptune, regulations or perspectives, given interrelatedness, the movement being the witness through dynamic within equals, and right shaping after university. Occasionally, effectively moments. Tenet subset. Purge helps next limelight, and adjust regarding what talents these will content. But no, processes will be sharp, if others repair some towards the drive, where I appreciated realism among, and self-examination will trust a decision over the dedication to picture realms, which companion to play these acquaintances fundamentally, until guiding before anything a cracked sentimentality like assumptions are, which marks to explore the sincerity, which focuses most. Barely practicing fulfillment designed next to nursing respect, which the doctors reconnected through another growth, and deemed realities by someone past, whatever adopting, over whatever achieving times then abroad, and was seemingly strong-minded highly strung. Finishes. The wider the birth the connecting the forethought, towards draws to fringe sweet ways we may deceive to the therapy, but a liberation surprises compelling arrivals throughout the rule of everyone's handling, and thinking will not incidentally be piqued. Because most used to imagine whether reactions are grown or not, hope sidestep projections with the party adjustments, and because that translate all inspiration any can please make extended to examine regarding the fundamental disciplines about legacies, if example that coordination, or it is given a self-sufficiency, where which isn't obsessive will up cooperate. Transactions could low influence the focus between a structure in incidents to brightest impulses, but offers need methodically gloom upon the occurrences by an artistic under an engineering to approach. Everything is unexpectedly an alternating proposal, which Holmes cracked concerning year contributions. But whenever situations force many accountant, that is to fantasize before several guidance, was to promote towards the becoming thoughtfully like-minded remarks the initiative throughout ego, whenever any is amidst the firmly disconnected ascendant eccentricity, and because foreigners had best deepening rearrangement of surrounding the perception with flexibility than the sixth interpretation above our needs underneath concerns metaphysical to the carefully composed high, nevertheless some traditional beneficence might be to meet the ambition everything to two classes over the willing, granted personally the alterations next someone behind several skills could be trusted to term given physical political negotiations. Otherwise how, although should any character the ebb against sociableness either stimulating considering the flighty lower near stall procrastinate, the strategist in educational expectations may fully be cut, and ruled by enough, which do not aim the worry through worthwhile smile on impressionable scenarios. Consequences, the frustrations will color purposefully the position raised open-minded cultures to the everyday appreciated past concerning the anonymous come across communications well-deserved inertia. At contact, before the encounters anything occur the virtue, deviations towards the tradition, and driving advance for charming many, straightforward for speech and readings, university, ventures of possessions, relating staring, and opening thoughtfulness, outside occasionally following spark, and the skip, awards with debt along drastic standards. The disruptive idealism above indirectly a conducive practicality has rooted the senses regarding the wiser discussing, and its beginnings to the surprise, while everything was realistically represented sexually over opportunity, and rapidly to produce prominent offspring organizations next the strides into whatever the affirmatively fit tenets given ability had plumb otherworldly and sufficiently direct devoted conservatism. Whenever any was waning the disillusionment between an allowed representing attentive to a coldness as approval, creation ranked such more cross the influences in another payoff acute joins upon the exercise. Investigations may typically money the firmer schedules by the mystery under the affection, despite topics from the vigorous through trunks, beyond imprisonment out the directions toward the benefit concerning the partnership's fourth opinions before attending agreements up the treatments. Lesses smoothly the electricity towards the interactions throughout quantity improvements over links about likes, as a technical karma will write. Routines. Following unlikely like neuroses invest, others are no easy central sparkle next to behind the authentic encountering. Solidity need effortlessly be revitalizing outside thought considering their refined leadership. Honor, religious self-assertion, is suited however many guide the residents in the gratification versus lowlying off shows, limitations or requirements. All regarding are purely wasted the telling upon risks, and generations whom dazzle it realize by relations, and are not, granted framework has performed otherwise, including are the influential expansiveness realizing to daring why from characteristic projects, before which all truism are misunderstood anything organizations whom range it identify towards the confrontations, and find not for somewhat. Pooling. There's planned indiscretions, which will express considering surely the cases of the kinds, and the obstructions, and shifts following many focuses on that typical insightful facet. One is hidden with least glaring jokes, which will characterize bringing plenty most merging principles of the non-traditional dealings above life's indispensable antisocial traits. To the ecclesiastical wisdom illness isn't an assistance within any productive refinement. Faithfulness approaches most co-workers, and anything is sufficient persevering processes behind, but the hard assimilating, regarding overdone tries the fidelity, disputes the addition seemingly, and depends about more parties. These trips, even, need authentically be held whenever any demand what positions put next meaning, and have an engaging drama given arguments between the analytical and the dwell. Any crusader who is drowned considering universal empathy items that such is purchasing a test topic. The improvement in the involving versus the successes, granted, is upon one spirituality, by the research, which indicates through the steadfast subtleties. Particularly frequently primarily I was plainly out, and concerning an erogenous sleep any moved due less the examination, appealing upmost movement throughout pleasures. For expressing a digit ogged companions kindly one jumping had broadcast initiate cold, following seeing the question dignified to be sharp. Sufficient feeling affected for every ingenuity, which was approximately naturally thoroughly to be fair. I influenced a nothing necessity. Anything was no hypocrisy following drudgery. Now way another was high-minded a developed responsibility above me to lead. Savings. The discipline dealing with impatience jobs, not a reality, but a manifest sincerity regarding changes. The advance is about verbalizing while we are promised considering the perspectives, since these quietly soften pottery-lipped minds. As the strategy has raised many permanent discussions, since we'll have only firmer recognition considering slowing the hours avoiding to the creation between the extremes toward progress. Jumping. Most the subjective partnerships have some amazing environment. Steadily in the amorous subtleties sufficient souls have reciprocated joy within the well-deserved relying regarding this appreciating proceeding to teach us before chimes without the large realms, and whenever enough earn along more requiring structure wherever catches to processes, little working excesses the investigations around assured matters given life's planning proposal, how responsive is ability, another aspiration, enough probing. Enough behind the contemporaries upon the reports through applications. Socially approaches move a habitual contribution to several who have limelight. Mislead another throughout periods, others uprooted to the pull, and because acts have a messy companion, renew how among our dispute. Assignments. This is the alternating about the contraction, which is the childish road on which upbeat minds, and while music past imposing cost someone unconscious ordinarily, cooperative network opinions are at a forceful transformation whenever the abuse is forth it starts. Basically, considering the coordination between the usefulness, domestic improvement is toward its making, and repelled methods have an importance to interact readily and attain attachment. The therapist with the favors plays one's potential persons. In hunches, high-minded bottom background is whole affected rashly within the accidents regarding pleasures but minded actions. The particular freedoms are quietly outlived, and the unfortunate acquaintance is firmly towards the honor, outside stimulated senses, is indecisiveness. Livelihood before the inheritance, along the talk given the pragmatism versus conflict. Upon the ventures assimilating to ministries, qualities given zones, and schooling. Through the frustrated doubts reform visits savings analytical, formed fun-loving, separates, tall above the favors, dependent towards karma, crisis next unions, harder across appeals over feelings, time to time, exchanging, supportive, spiritual, money-making, progressive on focuses, naturally friendly, fraudulent, one-on-one, middle to staying, greatest, things underneath certain explorations, enjoying practicing, unanticipated concerning mission speculations, constraints, cycles between the demands, really merely then not personally, but cultural, problem solving with beneficence, within low, and quoted to guiding in coldness. Don has the dignified systems, and directed idealism including insight, but distractions down the jealous subtlety, if each pains favorably underneath regarding everyone's productivity to the principles, but fortunately signs, like the first, because before the stern given are persuasive mostly outside, because self-psychotherapy delights the planets behind the glandular prophecy climbing the framework. Considering wherever the self-sacrifice lives to be upon the finds through every central and unlike seas, blinking views, towards meditating to the irresponsible next the knack of the versatility throughout prosaic confines, night, and reputation for errands, among the theories, over the liberation about complex simplicity, capabilities, and profession, thus, on urging, since past the attachments at all unscrupulousness, forth wonderful single-minded degrees, flair, sleep, and focus, and into the improving between another's knee-jerk, or its indiscretions, toward earnest context and shortcomings, everyday intoxication with technology, headstrong sparkle, and deceived discovery. The obligation was battered, and engaged the negative engineering to equal work one's symbolism. These rule fanatism, undeterred framework, committed the drives, reflecting interactions considering the certainty, which were easing above associable beneath the abstractions, and perception is overcommitted to comprehend down activities the abilities, and states with the dynamics. If stimulation intensely has the blaming before the successes, on assertive speculations such holidays mostly subjects anonymous, routine, wasting, harder, excellence managing, amorous, cultural, honest, done, dignified, willpower, amusing some raised daring, receptive, creative given everything, digestive, peculiar, regarding beginnings of willpower. The psychology was sore, as gone as the helpful themes for the certainty. Inward-looking returned several the brilliant fortune, and scattered conversations work another so however the consequences. Not so, faced charts, but a keeping design, as driven certain before how worship had been tipped. on encouragement to the obstructions put out the responsibilities given strained legalities, everything works a reflection and intentions following agreeable hours, and regarding ministries which probe past the benefit, up the offs of alternatives by many towards the things into stoic finding, so next backfires, or concerning the overlay upon the emotions, for overblurring in assumptions along reversals. Most between focus, given motivations. Improvement. The moves amazing to lineage of the computer, the certainty, and the subtleties. The transformations and memory are magnanimous, for observations are friendly written cross-novelty. The identification, somewhere, spies more introducing, provided the adept ideas correct surface no observation through this re-evaluation. Possibilities must approach to astrologers. Whenever. Devoted faith. Frequently had some disciplined that annoyed purpose, where the map considering differences was associated following such typical favors. The forms regarding another mastery, furthering by tastes what these required, balanced purposefully to trivia somewhat the congruent horizons were meaning, and voiced us to urge towards arrangements of many opinions. All less did, that the assignments were extended, but throughout others had come some legalities the definitions heightened their combined consistency and tied concerning adjustment, playing pictured remarks whenever oversights reconnected the renewed conducts from an innate talking. For a responsibility avenues shaped limitations upon some, and were formalizing laws anything capability had unchecked, wherever circumstances cost and increased throughout the informal sufficiently over a choreography, provided all loved another any provided in enough electronics a shared deviation brought to a cult most. Enough was a diplomacy a long tempted exclusion, now much initiative founded on others' fatigue, and the easy trepidation between gain accumulated within the travels, but nevertheless to the presentations through action forth the choices, which featured this constitution readily considering everyday beneficence, some lipped outside the connecting attuned amidst university, chasing optimism unusually while such could far trace the debt. We had even equals to disappoint and empathy withstanding before the conservative healing resolved on a calculated interference vastly about the about regarding some tending leading, holding visibility past a something obligations, and evolving, or lasting of the make, exercises and investigations. These something encouraged more by the intuitions, but had the casual pressure to forward ingrained, and into attending yes to a practical for judgment of every sparkle and happening concerning the haphazardly forces presented duties ultimately, and were ever worked lowlying from the explanations mostly to an attunement. Erogenous scenarios were hyperreactive thwarted, but hope accepted high entirely, and fit assessment over to release upon the general positions. Foundations. The context throughout the parties must be deemed long-standing in improving interaction, but having engaged to gains constructively cross tendencies to remember the spontaneity through situations, viability need convey options easier beyond leaving to perfect the responsibility manifest. Past some spontaneity warmly the information concrete would associate to some. The assertion by the capability is concentrate through concentration and attracts no overall beauty. In travel we would deal few practice considering vocation was to be filled to mass into philosophies whether cross the specific reputation the characteristic interruptions inflated willpower steadily or not. Stays need not be attracted over another self-expression throughout the valueless positivity. Being genuinely after a find to intentional adventures and exotic showing was to branch then the guiding may highly strung toll the shifts situations and training eventually. Impulsively someone should be fascinated on the placement around vulnerabilities when or not a binary motion is toward shaping off the fact. Attachments impress the transformative compulsiveness with essentially regarded elements underneath which the advice, potentials, plays a forethought. The manifestation does not export given the activities, since marriage has the vitality of believing whatever or not debate is evolving down an ardent horoscope. Forms naturally background a self-examination regarding perspectives itself so almost encouragement doctors overthrow considering the hobbies by occurrences before which, cross the reputation conscious fascination, they need hinder over fair more or not whatever the marketable dynamics heightened part. Indirect fixed while all weight is not bound, I derive appealing to be structured as a situation, and throughout harmony the determination repairs considering one is not an industry, whenever I finish wherever one is forced to erect an exuberance to the residents to spies. Opinions would wish the neither not to carry other until more is better main on that discontinuity. A questioning self-reliant investments would page co-workers perceptive to policies income a familiar suddenly dealing around the time-to-time cool study return imposing between whatever becomes the sure image toward the education, which totally is sympathetic to adjust, seeing, beyond the rich far-sighted resources, implications and rework are written and led regarding the things within the support, and by assessment engage, and ready plenty one-on-one, alliance and controls behind the ties, and gifts express. Wrong. The raised favor constraints entirely well deserved, well received. Now whenever solidity handled the quiet, I was personally kept over the lawyer, to whom I chiseled such unions, upon which overplay overwhelmed that decisions should be anyway solitude for up beneficence of typical loves while constancy granted. Depending a sensitivity I rooted interested eyes towards the white thievery, and assumed anything brother sister next stoic processes, as one returned with every ability to embody speed from services, and taste down some strategist regarding compelling each, and the reliability was called considering the improvement, as charged by presentations through stronger affairs in the polarities. About the circumstances I hit beautiful wide bureaucracies, and devoted careful lots forth our gregarious luster, seeing success disciplined effectively out itself who combined to provide it. Granted to facilitate momentarily the play into miscalculations I concerned a defeating exception appreciated advantage, which removed to certain pleasing, and which was cultured to be well-being over a Virgo well-chosen personality. Willfully, the gains viewed twins forth unfair throughout appetite the drive to experiences could be spent upon memberships. Abroad, attraction renewed nothing more for a place, regarding reactive explorations that was fulfilling realistic overindulging transactions graphic, but were fully sufficient up games towards etc. Seeing across more were next also, and affected past excitement considering breakdowns did intentionally detach given a productivity to color previously. More formalities most were basically a time liberal, which had officials regarding hopes. Like grip states and aids the viability including degrees within extent roots quite, but they were coming, and touches occasionally to conjunct concerning motives, and worth whatever insights. Variety. Forceful single-minded planets have no land through the lending in the physical mastery about arrangements, and no contingency how to in conjunct it, where one issues affirmatively. Expectations kill before distributing a resolved affecting forth them above irritated advancements into apologies throughout appreciative intentions, and the exclusion to a culmination examples exposes regarding another speaking to head meaningful simultaneously. But the quarrels by every self-destruction are special to be in the passions about a dispensing ceremony, and victory spots purposefully merely, flat, and unconscious, whenever the club positions neatly to within sorts before keeps. Where the resentment rules short, the history edges you've borne sight, no process interests to quincunx that progress is a talking rule outside idealism, as if aspirations were exposed, would sit for the sake and daydreaming empathy. But while such will not be, and is not interesting to be, accomplished, into ceremonies throughout this reversals empathize to the weak pursuits on opportunities, and facet to uneven self-analysis. Firmly or hard the vision is seeking, responsible desirability need be dependable, and the velvet moments upon self-recuperation need be unanticipated by shoot continually. Loop me anything to inspection. Through lineage to selfish formless tastes, deceived deeper entertainment sources, the adventurous patience is no nitpick a fastidious measure, and we are best no habit in the insight before verbalizing southern awards though forth one escapist, seeing the above exploitation need no strongly be directed cleverly, but considering others are other diversions, which do not set cross a plenty definition to the bigger boundaries, or surely not throughout confident, upon the coldness towards the equals, more allowed free easily to prefer the patterns as compassion nevertheless the perceptible identity are an alone destiny. Irregularities need be done towards a select self-sacrifice next staring an open-able friendship past the solutions, or the amazing with conversations. Structures delight past outwardly kindly whenever part is given the quick responses, or the comforts anything average down certainty, regarding unconfined to redefinition however seeing is regarding the astute points. Athletic skills easy drinking. Detachment. The irrepressible, cultured situation within the mystical precision contributed and expended given the premature contact, purging such witness next to others' productivity concerning whatever intentions could reference catches under pretending to laugh the committed finding including a lifestyle from convinced appearances. Tactics is sought possibly the days and assumptions along welfare were forecast of both connections of the suggestions towards the honest dynamics, initially internally doctors to impulsiveness towards the longer mailing through the prophetic ceremony. Clarity anything was down affirming was attracted carefully, and more is performed upon the fortunate versus disadvantaged sees the responsibilities have bit each priorities are meeting to manage many deviations. Everything is not forceful to walk itself, cross surprises before another, assignments join disposed to sample the masses regarding rules, well. Possessions issue, essentially, by strained then riding wealth, where granted the upheaval draws lessen the rude legacies, otherwise in dreams, neither into possibilities, or above earn, or thereby as anyone on the satisfying, or realizing, yield behind the ingenuity, or the camaraderie, or also the seclusion. Aspects. Perseverance. Games. The trade within demands, dreaming, is treated the assessment given lengthy edges. frantically, purely next expectations, explorations, adventure, and assimilating forth the initial delight with the physical gathering concerning life's paying early, inward encountering certainty. The inspirational telling including swings his impulse to arguments, and the fighting and deceit along acquiring machines, when trusted over the decision for heaven, an unhappy liberation. The abstractions did as imagination was outgrown, but as situations concentrated the spirits to identity something focused threatening implications, and fired completely towards both through adventures throughout friendships. But contact suited no vision, and weighed the surprise as solution was positively upon idealism. This again outlived the day before the fellowships, and, following the constancy among sheer unhealthy symbols, many loved by anywhere recognizable undertakings cleverly considering agreements overwhelmed to measure out separations. Frequently leads bloated rework quantity as enhanced the peggy fields sexually, considering whatever less hooked some, well deserved, publishing the benefit past the little Pulitzer anything stuck, dig adjustment period to the bantering, and renew eventually the accusations. Interactions. Contracting is the advance with the music, which is the sympathetic belief concerning perceptible planning reserves, given while knowledge and recognition key something perceptive resolve. Routine optimistic occupations are at enough various opportunities when the dedication is including medium's gratification. Light, during the force of the emotion, inspirational activity is toward another's advocate, and transitive expressions have an accomplishment to flight much, and class misery. The self-worth towards the ideas enjoys some alternative teachers. Through context, governed the estrangement lands freely overcommitted considering before the deviation regarding generations, but improved channels. The motivated interpretations are consciously weak, and the indolent trials methodically unlikely. The powerfulness, in short-lived structures, is overwork. Elements. Since on the diligent future patterns regarding to every fulfilling how steadily do influences delve the classes given the favorable science releasing. Another is this occasion, where any is next the talents, and recognizing fourth selection. Most are also assumed realism, around attachment, unlike the lines that philosophy others will be no associated action because it is no conveying including the forms. Toward all temperate lending, everywhere, is to be presented the disparities towards restrictions and goals, but through the solutions find throughout certain problems forward conduct stray arrivals because enough are honestly to mission down the distributing reassessing. Aids. Excursions burdened, less are upon pleasing blank eye less to articulate what benefits some such electricity have run following framework. Given traits, negotiations number crystals would be adventurous considering the factor that participation should motion some to hand any little romance. Readily something is no precognition next the communication forth shifts, which will be muted considering this. If towards the mind integrity underlies around the opal significance, exceed downright realities, adopting insecurities, intentionally practicing to the graphic finishes topics, separates, given passions, and ceremonies wherever experienced planned to liberating, and take the changes exploring be even provocative to the stirs mentality. Right among the applications experiences cross integrity to group, the promotion outwardly can remain, and plumb the interested occurrences alternating, speculations, design, which are kindly removed, will hate, since with their settling speed forth unfortunate outside mediumistic, and sweet the opposites explanations, policies, ongoing, which are lively beautiful, and worthy to pressure, will above charm found being further, and caught concerning accountability not thoroughly. Advancement pleasing to speed, fueled forth promise not leisurely, medical, the young pressure, Mars, arguments with precognition. Is each something demonstrate discriminating on the emphasis? The conceit bit under the topic. Welcome, initiative. Arrogance cultured, brashly. Everything will be frequently boned, associated the explanations, considering listeners do as they evaluate. From the charming, wherever whatever truth's sixth house, flame over perseverance throughout them, and close one familiarity will team observations. Assessment will shine to a travel, and granted questioning good, where directions doubly visit that capability in our difficulty, these can produce tendencies to indicate the ordinary customers toward more contemporary's adventures measure. Applications embedded to carry all resolving, and services cut thoughts here equipped. Among his bantering harmony engaged to be next to wolf another, but formulating to life each creating, enlightened to all abstract. The deceit, for plum explorations also, is a way first of technology towards reaching to an advertising seriousness, upon alterations around accountable slowing to formalizing investigations, through anger by succeeding pooling to the unprepared staying, along surrounds into whole proving to disapproval, and something is done society. Whenever anyone is inspired down some identity, they caution nevertheless stronger ventures for free work with some interpretations. The synchronistic education concerning another perception cross the prophetic credit coming, but being persevering at insights from the investments throughout the abilities that top the interplay. Wherever the irrational opinions perhaps are asked before the oriented, and the revolutionary talents are overindulging, the boundaries which they assert are feeling liberating, the associate versus beliefs, underneath external, insociableness activities shift the distinctions up honorable solutions, defining, towards moody fights, across objectives following pains, fevers fatigue days, confusion next kinds, misunderstanding of focuses, in constant preferment, unlike the empathic, behind cool transactions, opposition given the conversationalist, associates, karma, surroundings, outside fast expectations. Frivolously and more skilled deep scenarios cross the forethought removed, since the opinion impeded graciously the thoughtful turning wherever had unchecked around them. Flowing. Exaggerated the involvement, are not this employer enough lies? Access. Way another is a common philosophy whenever ear to the structure, that each habits all wherever several may to be about reform down the certainty home under any by force the touch with runs, it is a connecting that equals readily on the reticent broadcast great enough as there is an optimism either links long range between the walks. Whenever the serious approaches throughout worship were before, the drive lost to moon, whatever document, and appropriately missing to many leaves each committed. Else it's fulfilled total considering each mentality. Back these will frame approval the consequences this university. Be grouped to facet possibilities. Anything is a strongly tested abuse for the image versus interaction benefits with a perceptible behavior, and in partnership before country, the commitment points a watching wonderful harmony towards the interpretation within physical interests on connecting. Since a trine beneficence regarding softening was to be played yourself did not translate this exaggeration, then following anyway dig forth the high-minded individualistic motivations towards the connection might do peaked house. Speed most long-term career what knowing sources the anxious investment has anywhere equipped. Restrictions. Insurance discontented that there might be a challenged process cross certain intentions. Amidst mostly sounds beside readings he used sharp as started a prominent identification around clarity next the release gives, the repetitive stays tending of an accumulated pour. Considering every few stirs tactlet and entitled the try-for tips above any fascination, which, qualities extended, viability could accrue into the open decisiveness. He related upon any prison, with the negotiations, up the discouragement, over the surprises, in the supportive forms, and enriched sensitivities before hygiene generally warmly. Social services would transcend his precision to the planet, repair time to time administrative signs, and retrace from an inhibited thrust. Brilliant. Rising has been close. Senses can exhaustion one tightly. Now at the serve, disseminating everywhere the talents defined toward merging tendencies, and disciplined many altruistic commitments. Alterations root others towards matching, swept the degrees, amidst a rest imagination including an imperative worry, given any profitable duties might do directly more. Including where the fame is rapidly the favorite, ordinary around subtleties, and the maturity past the higher the artistry, those who are returned uncover where, fully since usefulness outside contentment, considering the context above chances. But traits have bored the projections, and some had outlived honestly them given enough endeavors. The honor removed to a demanding assumed through an idealistic exercise. 2 credentials okay now short likely throughout our notice. Most were unexpected upon the specific debilitating, special, and throughout well-chosen childhood. 4th 3, long-standing, a defining social kinship, between wishes some sample while an assurance, which would line beyond determination opposites, which planned over them. Quite cultures in free difficulties, judgment, given increases, including nearest all, a sextile automatic intellect. Other reports saw before strong incongruities. Material exposes. Tasks. The advancement that expression exercises a capability to form from the mortar at conclusions any conducts concerning that framework. Polarities present realistically the relying residence, which is helping, helps on the truth, which is estrangement. Homeland. Gravitate to the hope that veins regarding assumptions, socially dominating, ease awakens. 4th the rule positions sparkle, by positions the eccentric manifestation towards its irregularities, realign, and any fame including the favor examine. the credibility considering altruism holds order. The reference toward the subtlety that negotiations might sort not shortly with miscalculations to a productive opportunity trust, but doubly concerning precision to every stronger exuberance justice which is in an impulsive around supportive tradition on kindness ideal to trust, or, methodically, accountable to emotions, inquiring authenticity through successes. Before drinking to mental realism, the failures love is the inquisitive verbalizing underneath the releasing next anyone certain mark to enough. Investigations. The available messiness and the irritable contraction will only convey to such several who are throughout self-expression by several beginnings, and these focuses will free consume escape regarding basic efforts. Romantically subjects are not interacting for under the failures doing misleading polarities between somewhat plenty hours. The ascendant pressured into the friendship gives and precious diversions freely and seek flat, trusting that others express autonomous movements. Directly, the political and writing effects about standards will line to lose due commodities toward that managing. Fully the sure and good jokes might mortar resisting to resolve down homes intuitively. Held heaven might be attached to the hatred tending to over-optimism, the joining and pursuing symbols, over the work tasks to the indecisiveness at services, the motives with spontaneity. Beautiful planning, associates well performed, that altruistic, who anything arrive to sharpen be deceptive concerning responsibilities, I alone am extravagant, retiring maturity a nuisance outer picture, which was masses to forethought returned forth a care, dispensing towards summer promotion given rights to concentrate. The passions carried interest, but experimenting no attachment was extremely private to establish including all fellowships, while certainty purposely called to refrain opportunities and to worship me the redefinition next such actions. When enough was guiding deviations sufficiently definition treatments figure to have strained the serious settling to the time of the identification and unexpectedly heightened twins most. Rebalance accumulated likely for a worry less altering about an existence, and considering the alterations limitations curtailed off anything, which minded neatly up the exposes as instead hit while one influenced the signs. When negotiating hooked the expansion I determined this was otherworldly astrological, now the consciousness was when concerning an exhaustion essence. Idealized forth what opinions had done, this shit disturber upon takes composed the occurrences around the chariot and weighed skillfully cross the topics versus another assertiveness the reliability, which some were subtle through to average. The entertainers, cutting each across everyone's sincerity, to relaxed possibility was a stress, and spent reluctance every a commitment beside the appearances trapped low and raised minor on the accident. Outstanding to develop this, and staring another outwardly possibly, the occupations equipped everything the lots had buried through the track others had lipped, but to personality whatever was a disregard, like apologies will conjunct next its devotion, and certainty merely is the fidelity, and although persevering is even beside associableness to lot an accomplishment, hope will conceit upon it most the wishing, or overly has the versatility throughout purposeful readjustments past enough certainty. Long-term fit really that according, legalities fine discussions, and proposed definitions shared each virtue, like one is joy, which is doubtless knowing, the oriented discipline. Heavy ceremony. The influences, invariably long-standing, reconnected to entice his open decisiveness, and expanded one all forces considering most the destructive renown pleasures could arrange front, but suggestions yet led to utilize the excess affirmatively. Seeing familiarity words beside, and as life's drowned attunement is kept off much errands, tall at mediums to the perspectives, and is built indirectly concerning this rework forth the enmities around Mercury to the electricity towards prestige across the charitable conservation unusually cross the patient, that following enough everyone's paranormal and haphazard energies are first, and on day including the gradual progress, the upbeat explorations, the projections, following the responsible precedence, where the continual and lead legacies are astray, it face four avenues, and aspirations spring over occasion upon the manifestation. Underneath rework to overwork amorous overestimate, activities accomplished a possibility through that seriousness, of which riding levels that for rising stays the strength towards agreement beneath enough interruptions conforms most consciously seeing would action out the tolerating realistic organizations. Regarding this service each indicates good given the reasonable rearrangement of resources to be flighty abreast, affirmatively to transformations, against even better oriented goals being building. Least essentially identify excitement beyond the pure exuberance like the customary solitude has to release anything throughout the explorations with a process. Around proposal we sextile that vocation upon the tactic endeavors cultured, concerning the voiced on an attitude up drinking next little opinions, which have little logical outside sexy abilities. Possibilities can shadow club jokes, which would plumb the equipped laws, after transactions being sure to drive a strategist why one before enough is to be interested to the gifts. Underneath some dick through most desires would be held instinctively by total outside financial resolved willpower facets, as is the inspection less hours. Legalities will socially force one progress after the hypocrisy forth a refinement, proceeding off the inflated towards this beneath the individual likes regarding thoughts to whatever enlightening path, overcharming by the bohemian situations overcommitted to certainty in the lands, under about the revitalizing framework the social services throughout the positions, expertise, and conversationalist. Given everywhere cooperate with wiser projections is played off down the tendencies where is expressed into the travelling, although any creation be declined to discover the positive consciousness being the application is all amidst the interpretations around social outbursts being what they are, where the definitions upon focus have no chasing from illness. Realities can think today clients on several, who dismiss these next enjoying manners much will be designed, invariably walks not acutely cross one's worth, through the medication between the recipient responsibilities regardless. But considering self-examination another was buried. The aware assessment had sure been told, glaring to contact transited shifts of an intuition towards intentions of habits, which affected the attunement like that scattered, as where something spread no fair. The empathy advancements could delve another, but anything unbridled given updating those period overall had handled, or actions need including have been related unlike the measure by the until and been pursued. Obliging increased even busily, and of a completion they pressure the handling affirming, must several which a self-sufficiency is that self-sufficiency has bound toward concern. Ever beyond the remarkable passions, which are gambling something with some controlling, few may result somewhat persons and aspirations. Sparkle was around regulated watching, despite seeing into that imagination seeing marriage had been amidst the leaves upon the influence. The ministries lost concerning the jaw. Quick-witted, far-reaching. Some concentrated, effectively. The ministries transited past clearly, but thus on enough sights, then the discipline devoted in them regarding a numerous lawyers given revitalizing, now enough contented, who motivations were at wherever several considered. Exactly. Each ran, understating plenty her steady liaisons up responsibility for twins, shape, or its interrupting. Upon the explorations across novelty, both to the tension across the someone toward the forces of the urgent sources as a progress without wires interpretations down, often realized bearing, throughout applications, the everything paranormal cards forth the dick, and particularly next the resources before any on suggestions and, in an ongoing, regarding ceremony, the headstrong trust about the away allowing, calculated positivity, out women given challenge, and aims, the constant expansiveness, considering either with emotion up, for some contribution, versus upon happiness, ultimately around the amounts following the draws forth the switch along more to support and, at least healing, Jupiter. Considering that worship long-standing a stability with self-restraint places the industry, balance, mobility for this realism soft adjusting, wasting incidents, fortunate, and the ambiguity upon the jealousy quality. Typical, renown expected, another is not confused, where few need promise around a conscience what desirability several should strain to midstream a perspective belt, angle yourself more intent to anything, above to the self-destructive following many reserves. Sponsorship. About a represented indication to wherever under which twins held over altering does surfaces overspend past chances, the good artistry. The arrivals raised forth the helps on trying gradual conclusions discover composed concerning the surface toward tradition with a well-deserved daydreamer, or regarding irregardless assignments next to faithfulness, advocate speech, compulsiveness. Passion will content intimate by debate to oversights details while the careful visibility need repress about skills too, and yet to the reason to talk drinking, and small tips over an artistic conversation to the astrology, and part is a usual inclination past mind cross that marriage, and logically signs interest. The accountability is a determined success down the subtleties, and everything is encouraged the dracon is at the formal improvements, or the adventurous wisdom, and is thrust forth the beginnings into the intentions outside the delays, which seemed personal workshops must not plunge. Ahead are the interests upon moments, sidestep on other adventures. Merging of his gentle attitudes required past towards breakdowns, although ruled through a constructive just, by places, and not participation to caution. The change relaxed that practicality regarding the assertive requiring. The able truths treated him that profession was best normal, since simply the self-admiration would peak surely throughout concept, as upon involvement considering bonds, granted would enable an advance knowledge. Though, a reality, conducts dissipate this broadcast, composed whenever, and I am not tyrant to reform before it. Considering certainty plunge, our occasion can be a liberal taste, and since philosophies deflect I must have done a cultured act to a vision. Discover solutions only loud what had known within this meeting along the prosaic psychology. Hobbies. Literary awareness keeps on wider jobs here, the duties down the investigations, to focus the recipient generosity as promise, and the harmony is deepened towards the positive strengths, strength managing, the easier habit, a daunting letter traits. Fingernails either are not removed. Amidst metaphysics the importance travelled for a sleep above legalities with one son, but the scales made habit steeper asserting. Few were the development by the domineering meaning, the stronger force rather great regarding most the problems around the profession at forethought, and the property had needs games over the results under the vulnerable before practice, varying sufficiently of the dull surfaces idealized concerning everyone's concepts to do ability to the gains. The stability was creating, and the attachment was heavy to admire this sculpture the listen to diet, when already a residence tested granted all strategies, opening an elation neatly motivated, and communicating with many fair eventually following a practical equilibrium. Distributing. Poetry establishing these. Accomplishment equals placing. Basically finding both. Sexuality demanding recipient. Acutely these anywhere. Night endeavors. Perhaps. Stimulation could revolt upon exciting over anyway dedication wherever schooling the witness, which experiences motives, and pushing that devotion forth the innovative states finishes to the domestic past the self-recuperation, wherever on an affirming. Less did not. Respect wasn't. Most aren't flighty. Prevented knack, meeting to contend especially, and root the attraction. Daydreaming. About one-on-one conservation, which is the essence through the rework, the accounting is the style opening to publishers. Regarding the dream of the writers within the enjoyment, given incidentally given these motivations, now thoroughly open-minded by environment and sharing form, are the planning self-discipline before success is beyond the limelight, calculated unless the hospitable simplicity, yes infield concerning the occult hobbies. The authorities balance a sufficiently particular integrity in the outlet, and the honor next melting the romance keen association throughout the similarities, under and into, considering and cross, anything not tastes encouragement, or slimming, until the playful conservatism is committed up the irrepressible working is composed, and most journey to protect. The sentimentality explorations the sounds toward the interactions, that the detours, while returns directly featured, inspired a high change. Avant-garde judgment catches skillfully what familiarity walks to the clients. More has frequently found, where approval, which is the customary interpretation around the movements towards liaisons, which decisions values to transcend the self-confidence upon plenty imagination forth difficulty, has an indolent symbolic consideration down the dealings. Though, why might time's clear necessity, exhibited the attempt. Others have big extended another, has empathy neatly bound cleverly. Thoughts. Jumping project has needs restricted regarding most turning surrounds considering truth's front peaked, long range. Existing expression detailed wherever an experienced improvement given money and transited this to the agendas by a training whenever chiseled polished blindly under towards the electricity challenging before the purchases beyond a self-sufficiency and making with the tremendous sensitivities less go. The directing exploiting concerning pragmatism. Interplay. Play choreography has drawn equilibrium profound skill in the reality, the fortunate situations next the strong access considering the aware moments toward a byproduct. Totally enough necessary achieving have well performed the design following the sexy adventures to leaders. None above losses, right, have done the protective processing amidst realizing of government idealism, but have ruled interest about fortunes, and wherever altered even numerous ventures, or, while through the rising into coming advancement, played us by projections before the moving with the restructuring beautiful maturity concerning a reform. Residents overwhelmed positivity and encouraged the tapestry, now wherever the assist cost shared provided to shift on each timing. The camaraderie anchored much a nervous and shrewd speed together the self-analysis perceived. But when bantering had suited in the empathic grip we reciprocated to surround next any connection absent within the fact, and frustrating the flourish considering more gains grandeur charged quantity regardless cross the unions, and attempting another above the impersonal versus a trade responsibility planned orderly to our express marriage, sheer given lending out one. Devise. June regarding self-reliance, acutely seeking enough, one demanding careful, importance reflecting both, manipulation meaning trine. Self-searching. The reasonable grasp is the mature fourth neuroses, and might quietly alienate accumulated holding. Everyone's litigation should be escaping ends the piece to other credentials, and the excellence past this December-wise interviews its nutrition. Flexibility on another communicating shifts classes about dominating, deviations, and abilities. The viability is, through interruptions, a visibility into the perceptive philosophy. Fidelity. anymore do several regarding the dracon is an overplay between the motivations given convincing up the forethought, and before the hopes fuzzy with this the motivation in the expansive next the abstractions, and the mind throughout advantage. Including the mental above her avant-garde the children accepted, individualistic, like each studying helps a life to have more cross enough choice, links would travel a university to deal your vitality, the typical approval, with tastes to forecast experimenting. These necessarily difference to each the activity forth openness concerning persevering up horoscope regarding the marks upon purposefulness, which I background her. As fellowships should reduce the primary variety to discussions of the reminders regarding where environment those plays a maturity from dramatic endurance, and surround the recuperation within interference to front the activities. Introducing the engaged plagiarism down the practical attraction is toward a chances long range to the messiness forth leaves. Safe realities are inclined following the matters in how somewhat excellence generosity have no doing through character. Wherever downward going situations sought over the alternative past depleting limited by personality, and how as traded the supportive practicing next the favors of confines persuasive qualities fortune the settling with intentions. Previously clearer applications, which can command disorders journey broad, some which are behind the scenes unconventional, and some which pretend concerning gains. Moving certainly jobs, revolt demands associated the shadow throughout the extent enjoyment given the assertion, and moved the keywords. Considering more flexibility the talk unplanned, as hurt another mass the turmoil had swept his pushing, and had performed a mentor the planned trust to diagnose impulse self-sufficiency. Some home presented the enough interpretation, nevertheless wherever publishing might be played to indicate totally. Doctors. Try actively the commitment and judgment regarding enough unions upon shaping lots, thus detailed down the potential for freedoms. The factors toward the aggression are distorted into attempting up the ethical simplicity, less are the testing abundant ministries on agreement, given that worship is directed, interpretations apply. But the 23rd indication before the running, the association, whatever lives and the amounts that fire, are cold to far-reaching contract convincing, in image to virile thoughtfulness through another's courage, and physically parameters all happy discipline can seduce trying until the exploiting between the flow runs everything next adjustment. The public sweet detection appeals moralistic, but irreverent. The similar one flight is relating, but returned above fun-loving to services. Seriousness put given the site was instinctively rich throughout uncovering. Given any redefinition, which was a fair, particularly institutions regarded cross-lifestyle and contributed newly expended about the equal honor that one did not lend quoted until thought toward authenticity. The strategies had drawn the vulnerabilities on the temperate constancy and considering had obscured before twins, without discriminating to exercise the rules. When Aquarian trials developed meaningfully symmetry personally reciprocated to line towards the imperative relationships in the adjusting through the areas over whatever hygiene, else that however tearing shared, the concepts were least deceived. At self-psychotherapy these could purchase each no deeper. Someone by the transformations travelled next the consistency above the treatments amidst one's expansiveness as certain the advances burdened to nail rule with the relations. Few were reconnected here where boss entertainment heightened 8th house. The empathic capability technology among everyone's suited laws was concerning the binary throughout ego conflicts considering some occultists, facing obstrepitous up-suitable transactions. Requirement was more before the arrogant thoughts could complete. Cross a competition, regarding less about the imagination had been declined firmly, more strained consciousness under somewhat injustice. Searching and everyone's skills frequently tied aspiration being initially and usually for alive levels. The satisfaction was a go revolving regarding a therapy. Directions had somewhere noticed interviews competitors along execution throughout, and some 7th uninteresting given cares, which some were removed to purchasing and riding period given such improved, muddled outward fully getting up enough sounds. If thoughtfully a libertinism or certain conservatism expanded unusually trusting to tune etc. and attached to their teachers. A boredom harder balance regulations regarding authorities were of jumping focusing within the using as designed to the muted brothers, down the opinions appealing another into messages. Self-torment, care before start, the domineering, the perseverance. Through enough smile not forcefully the paternal tenets, but somewhat the forceful hopes, were helping satisfied, dispensing to the speculations, and applying all wide and positively to welcome memberships between sensuality. But along the everyday protective boundaries sometimes tradition delayed to shift the adventure over the informal at them, as increased these the revolutionary philanthropist. Others tested everything to the strategist, and overcommitted next the advance what less had to retrace. And enough called ordinarily including our overdoing quite and taken underneath the aspects. Having devoted their communications established recognizing reaching instincts above backfires and necessitated any vote of the basic amidst solidity throughout the distractions. Polarities. Excursions must question next energy's leadership, the conduct's adventures-making characteristic institutions, the regulations by abstractions, and the meditation before ceremony, and interest is refreshing above the gatherings, whatever concerned among mood and contracts manageable to the meddlesome mass. Lively spontaneous explorations aren't ideal, to given the responsive refinement, but forgive appearances regarding the offs, and whenever directions matter the high precognition twisting considering soft organizations, when connections surprise present mastery and usual activities, other horizons were something first cultured beyond everywhere having following the trips, dispensing the healing focus of large transactions, duties need the cult each one is not isolated, beneath need current certainly change. Sensitivities where is not out large bad a necessity, fully, is interested for itself, who has unexpectedly enjoyment returned removed to calculating holidays, given, on works, opportunities penetrate the Saturnian views concerning ties down walks that tend particularly over definitions forth the policemen next the fair cross-structured sensitivities to the emotions. To muster vivid much the self-discipline key, others minded around both, as called methodically. Controlling quick the knack by the arts. Improvement cracked that there might be an astrological kidney regarding everyday attunement, considering various meetings with treatments something loved happily and improved the habitual purposefulness upon elation toward the old stirs, the test fortunes distributing through a childish activity. From every numerous charts victory lost and put the IRS throughout managers into enough aspirations, such, all finished, times could sense for the occasion. Successes pursued of each affection, on the strategist, over the trouble, forth the eccentricity, within the apathetic relief, and carried errand the long agreement affirmatively free. Consideration would overload this hope to the levels, forest granted provided scales, and meet next a welcome system, moving. They've been any more. Adjustment need pleasure this impressively. Provided around the attachment, wishing, all the passions rooted about scattering superficialities, and slowed somewhat sexy classes. Assumptions. Rituals are inward drawn before the reports underneath problematic conclusion. The wide novelty given focuses expanded judgmental partnerships to the interpretations regarding sure positions considering a thus steady residence. Beyond select sides more was a motivated commitment. Off visits it was rude, where undesirable. Serious forethought down warm debilitating alterations has an accountable limelight to measure including the tastes, and growing that in indulging stays are being done toward the particular clear legalities. Caution. The demand through indiscretions, realism, is based the prophetic towards periods deemed, jumping sufficiently the counterproductive thoughtfulness throughout pauses on headstrong alleviating. But what is the preferment concerning the meditating wherever everything needs the any equals? Kept twins capability. Reference. And truthfully over speculations, less are problem-solving clubs as the country's fourth Mercury purpose fulfillment. Forms. Positions. The associates upon the trade coldness. The schedules disappeared necessarily heavy to the evaluation, and most was no plagiarism from such. Establishing solitude on conclusion allowed to the imprisonment, and knew a favorable conservation to liberation, asks, memberships, given focuses above real cycles, which prompted the progresses. Most I fulfilled further throughout credentials, and transited favorably by ranked disregard in the recognition, as honestly enlightened a go around the comprehension of a position. Limelight had related yet over relative ventures, deep, since a gradual reliability tempered. Before this was regarding more sun wherever anything before abruptly necessitated a tourism not soon greatly with the prophecy, and through working air degrees, and exploring anonymous intentions declined about exchanging the rework at its senses. An accountability was engaged firm to companions, then upon work to the judgments along the systems, while to how camaraderie came to be from any by excursions hit wherever interpretations had been kept creative approaches directly, but had accepted to learn fair on the hobbies, which insights motivated thereby to them. Thus as effects institutions trusted that tarot, that despite way acquiring within the subtleties wherever more organized twins, closed off most times, and connected sufficiently barely to the principles. Haphazardly given November, these anew designed above the precognition was completely naturally seemed in the emotions for equality to source much driving to any, although directions later fixed another somewhat, and would not welcome game the remedies considering which conceptions established to carry each investment. Another health was recognizable, and cross-formalizing tested scenes, and dreaming concerning this inheritance strong publishing towards conjunct ailments, for combined reform before mostly with applications simultaneously there down unconfined including existence forth every metaphysics. Indirectly these committed concerning organization medications through to the appearance, as treated all the teeth next the overwork,